I would like to call to order this regular meeting of, or special meeting of the Boulder Valley School District Board of Education for Tuesday, April 15th, 2025. Board members may attend and participate in board meetings by electronic means in accordance with BVSD policy BMEA and state law. Laura, can you please call the roll?
Chavez. Medler.
Here.
Niznik.
Here.
Quinlan Aweda.
Here.
Rajpal.
Here.
Sargent. Unger. I'm recording Kitty by presence. I see her.
I'd like to turn it over to Beth Nizik to read our land acknowledgement this morning.
Boulder Valley School District resides and operates on land that is the ancestral homeland and unjustly and illegally taken territory of the Ute, Puebloan, Arapaho, Cheyenne, Apache, Navajo, and 48 other tribal nations historically tied to this land, who have called this land home since time immemorial. We acknowledge the atrocities committed here, including the painful history of genocide, forced assimilation, and efforts to alienate the indigenous inhabitants from their homeland, supported by the policies of the United States government. BVSD is aware of the many indigenous peoples, past and present, and their dignified nations and cultures who care for the land with strength and resilience. BVSD recognizes the histories of the land in Colorado and the survival of the many nations that carry their oral traditions into the present. It is BVSD's responsibility to educate ourselves, our communities, and our students so we can embrace the wisdom and knowledge of indigenous peoples and actively stand together to address injustices. In offering this land acknowledgement, we affirm and honor the history, wisdom, oral traditions, and resilience of indigenous people and recognize the responsibility to care for and appreciate this land together.
Thank you, Beth. I would like to remind everybody that the mission of the Boulder Valley School District is to create challenging, meaningful, and engaging learning opportunities so that all children thrive and are prepared for successful, civically engaged lives. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We're glad to have you observe and participate in our meetings. At this time, is there a motion to approve this morning's agenda? Moved by Beth, seconded by Alex. Laura, can you please call the roll?
Chavez.
Yes.
Medler.
Yes.
Niznik.
Yes.
Quinlan Aweda.
Yes.
Rajpal.
Yes.
Sargent.
Yes.
Unger.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Board members, today we have one topic on the agenda. We are taking an in-depth look at BVSD strategic plan and UIP. I will turn it over to Dr. Anderson for introductions.
Thank you, Board President Rajpal, members of the board. Excited to be with you here this morning as we take a deep dive into UIP implementation measures, doing some progress checking, and then aligning that to our All Together for All Students strategic objectives. With us today, we have Dr. De La Cruz, Dr. Gallegos, Chris Brecht, Dr. Dings, and Senan Nauer, who is going to be able to speak to some of the implementation and where we are. As a reminder to the board and the public that UIP is a 2-year plan. Our strategic plan is more of a 5-year plan. And so we do have some progress to update, but certainly still work to do. And I'm sure we'll have great conversations around that. And so with that, I'll turn the presentation over to Dr. De La Cruz.
Good morning, President. Can you hear me okay? Okay. Good morning, President Rajpal and members of the board. And of course, Dr. Anderson. So last time we were all at this table together in February, we shared mid-year data around literacy and math. We launched and reviewed the KPI dashboards and the updated draft of the scorecard. And throughout this process, the board has provided us with really thoughtful feedback, which we appreciate and have incorporated. And of course, everything we're doing is iterative. So we look forward to continued feedback. So as Dr. Anderson said, we have a bigger team with us today. So in addition to Claire, Jonathan, Chris, and I, who have been at this conversation with you several times, we also brought Bianca Gallegos, our Executive Director of Strategic Partnerships, and Senan Nauer, Director of Student Support Services, who oversees behavior responses, discipline, restorative practices, and bullying prevention, among other things. So Bianca and Senan will be providing additional context for the updates of 2 of our strategic objectives today. We're going to be discussing this morning the UIP implementation measures in the form of a progress check for each of the Altogether for All Students strategic objectives. As you know, our UIP is more clearly aligned with our strategic plan than it has ever been, and it's a 2-year UIP. And so we have many things in progress, some things each at different stages that we're going to talk more about today. And these are all 2-year implementation indicators or milestones. Slide 3. The implementation measures are, we think of them as those adult moves that lead to enhanced student outcomes. And I remember last spring, President Rajpal suggested when Jonathan and I were giving kind of an end of year strategic plan update, could we take a look at some of those leading indicators? And we incorporated that into our UIP implementation measures. And so we're really glad to be talking about those today. Our UIP names actions and implementation measures for each of those strategic objectives that you see on the slide and that we all know really well. Looking at grade level standards, tiered supports, post-secondary preparation, and well-being and inclusive practices, which have those headlines that we'll be referring to more throughout this morning. So let's get started. We're going to get started with the first strategic objective that we call no limits, and it's referring to grade level standards and instruction. Excuse me. Of course, right when we get started, this happens with my throat. What you see here are the actions on the left. So we're going to be following this pattern throughout the presentation. Actions on the left, implementation milestones on the right. And as we go through each strategic objective and the progress checks, we're going to pause for conversation after each of those so that you'll have an opportunity to engage, interact, ask questions, and we'll be able to just have discussion about it. So the actions that you see here that we committed to are collaborative planning in the form of DDI for planning for universal instruction and differentiation, increased professional learning around culturally relevant pedagogy and cultural competency, alignment to the depth and rigor of standards in our instruction, and the implementation of curricular materials. Specifically thinking through new curricular materials at high school and middle school in math and ELA and world language. The implementation milestones that you see here, I'm not going to read because we're going to detail them on the next slide, but we're really looking at depth of knowledge and professional learning. So let's take a look at those on the next slide. And so again, this is the pattern we're going to be following. You'll see that we're going to refer to the actions and implementation milestones and then take a deeper look at what is in place in terms of progress at the time. So looking at the implementation milestones, you see that they are in progress. In terms of DOK or depth of knowledge, we committed to increasing the percentage of classrooms where audited student assignments are predominantly requiring a depth of knowledge level 3 or 4. And that's in the demonstration of skill and understanding to complete the task. And when we think about the instructional core, it's comprised of student engagement, teacher knowledge and skill, and the rigor and relevance of the content. But the center of that is the task or what students are actually doing. And that's where we're looking for depth of knowledge. So because we're in the beginning stages of learning of depth of knowledge, we've begun with our leaders, so our academic directors, our school leaders, so principals and assistant principals. That's where the learning is taking place because, of course, our school leaders are the implementation leads at their school. So they're carrying the learning forward to the staff of the school. So we engage in this learning during PK-12. And during that time, we've had 2 of our 3 DOK learning sessions that were slated for this year with our leaders. And these have been led by our academics department, have been very engaging learning experiences, very hands-on, experiential, for principals, APs, and academic directors. We also committed to at least 10 hours of professional learning around standards, culturally relevant pedagogy, and cultural competency. And you can see those hours that are outlined in that bottom blue box. And what I want to emphasize that what we're striving to do is merge cultural competency, culturally relevant pedagogy with academics work, because this is how we better ensure that every student can have academic experiences that are grade level, that are engaging, that are affirming and meaningful. And this is how we truly create the conditions for learning without barriers for every student. So while we have had and do have dedicated professional learning around inclusive practices, some of which have been led by Floretta King, we also have been really intentional about integrating the content, the concepts, and practices of academics and culturally relevant pedagogy so that they are more merged and more of an integrated experience that we're striving for in the classrooms. So you can see here the hours that we've had district-focused professional learning. And what you see in the asterisk at the bottom is that there's a lot of cultural competency training and professional learning that's happening at the school level, but what we are accountable for is what we are providing as a district initiated professional learning. And so that's what you see here. And you can see that we're really, again, working to embed standards delivery with differentiation, with affirming meaningful practices for students that we think of as being culturally competent in the classroom. Some of the approaches to professional learning, as I've said, have been PK-12. That's when all of our school leaders and academic directors come together for learning, and we've spent time learning about released CMAS items and the standards attached to those, and really looking at where we have been strong in our outcomes around particular standards and where we have room for growth in particular standards. And every school has their own report from CDE that shows exactly that. And so that gives our leaders an opportunity to focus on their school level needs as well. And then we've had specific explicit DOK or depth of knowledge training. We've embedded this work into working with our leaders around standards and teacher evaluation and having those constructive conversations for improvement. We've had late start time dedicated to meeting common goals, and that's ongoing every month. Our instructional leadership time together has been very focused on leading through the instructional core, depth of knowledge, connecting it to evaluation for teachers. And we've provided targeted instructional coaching. And new this year, our teacher to teacher program, where we have teacher mentors and teacher mentees, is providing job embedded professional learning that is, again, incorporating not only standards-based instruction, specifically at elementary right now in literacy, but also doing that in ways that are delivering grade level, engaging, meaningful content. And so that's been a really amazing new add-on, new layer to our professional learning this year. Additionally, our leaders have leadership look-fors in these areas, so they know that as a system, we're learning together and we're looking for particular leadership moves that we're all getting better at, and that our executive directors are coaching when they come into schools as well. So we're going to pause here for questions and conversation on this strategic objective and the implementation milestones.
Board members, any questions for Dr. De La Cruz? Alex and then Jorge.
Can you clarify for us how many days of PD the teachers and administrators have that's either like district directed or school directed or individual directed? I'm just trying to put the amount of time that we put into this in perspective of the total amount of PD.
That's a great question. So per the negotiated contract, the district has three half days, so a day and a half of district-wide professional learning that we can own, if you will, and direct. And then one Wednesday morning late start a month can be district directed. And so that's not very much time. I appreciate the question. And that's why we really strive to optimize the time that we do have and to embed these concepts in the best ways that we can so that we can, so that time can be really well used. And then, of course, you didn't ask this question, but also principals are then engaging in professional learning that they direct at their schools. They have school-directed time, but in terms of district-directed time, it's not very much.
And how much is that school-directed time helped by the principals?
So that I have to think about that. I believe it's another 3 days total. And that tends to be divided out into half days. I'm sorry, a day and a half divided out into 3 half days. That tends to be how it plays out. So, and then 3 Wednesday mornings a month for late start. And those can be professional learning time. Sometimes principals use staff meeting time if there's an agreement by the staff for professional learning. But those Wednesday mornings, so district owns 1 and school owns 3. And those can be professional learning. They can be time dedicated to data-driven instruction, either learning or implementation, which principals have done an excellent job of capturing that time for additional DDI learning and application. And it can also be used for, it's also being used for time for multi-tiered systems of support, either application or learning as well.
I'm going to piggyback on that question and then pass it over to Jorge. So with the district-led time, I'm assuming since we have a goal of 10 hours that you're taking attendance and tracking that, or how do we know if we're getting to the 10 hours or not?
Another excellent question. So with our leader, we track it, we take attendance with all professional learning, including with ourselves. And so our leaders for district leadership team, for PK-12, for instructional leadership meetings, sign in. That's the way that we take attendance. Same with teachers. When we have professional learning days, teachers also now sign in so that we can understand what the participation level is of teachers engaging in professional learning. And so our human resources and professional learning team track that and are in touch with school leaders about attendance at their school, so that we have an understanding of the percentages of folks who are and are not engaging in the professional learning. Is that the question you were asking?
That is, and then like, let's say somebody happens to be sick on a day that this is gone over. Is there opportunity for them to re-engage or engage with the content that they missed around some of these standards, that the depth of knowledge and cultural competency related PD opportunities? Or
Excellent question. And that's tricky because we have dedicated time carved into the school year for professional learning. And if teachers don't attend, and if we were to offer makeup sessions, because we can't obligate them to work outside of contract or to leave their classroom during a school day, let's say, we can have opt-in sessions. And so that's our ability around that. There have been some times when our academics team has required some makeup sessions, for instance, with new materials and some required professional learning that is absolutely necessary in order to implement those materials. When there was a significant percentage of teachers who did not attend, another required session was created. And so we're working with what we can around some constraints and are definitely aware that it's very important for folks to be present in order to learn, just like we say about our kids.
thanks, Laura. Jorge?
When you say significant percentage of teachers don't attend, sometimes when that's happened, what does significant percentage mean?
We have had days of professional learning when 40% of teachers took a day off that day, for instance. That's an example.
Thank you. I want to follow up along a similar vein. You're in year 1 of this progress, right? Is this 10 hours over 2 years, or this year? Is this like, we're making progress, right? So this is like a 2-year plan, a 3-year plan. It's based on schools. Given this question about teachers, is it a better sense to not just, we've done it at the school and we're done, or is it more about, do we need to hit a certain percentage of our teachers to make sure that this is being implemented? I kind of just understand what the markers are and the goal and what the timeline looks like and how much time we actually have.
Definitely hearing a strong valuing and agree with that valuing of participation in professional learning. And so, yes, this is a 2-year plan. So this is 10 hours over 2 years, and largely because of the time, the layout of time that I've described. And we're purposely planning repetitive content so that, for instance, if some folks were not present during the content delivery, then much of that content is going to be infused into the next session. For instance, with culturally relevant pedagogy, that's never a one and done. And so how we deliver for depth of knowledge in culturally competent ways, in ways that are, affirming and meaningful, that is being infused into the content delivery over time. And so we're hitting a lot of the same key points. And it's also critical to have folks present in order to learn, because even though we are intending to be repetitive, if someone's not there, they're still missing the learning. So point well taken. And in summary, we're being as intentional as possible around ensuring that folks are present to learn, but also in ensuring that what we are building in terms of professional learning is meaningful, engaging, varied, but also consistent enough so that the message is consistently being emphasized throughout the professional learning. We're also looking at some other, opportunities that are, again, voluntary, but opt-in outside of contractual hours. If teachers want to engage in those, we have some book studies around equitable education for all students that many teachers have opted into. These job embedded opportunities like teacher to teacher have been a big hit. We'll be able to continue that pending federal funding, but that's definitely been something that teachers have been very engaged in and enjoy learning from their colleagues. And we were very selective in the mentor teachers that are taking the lead on this. And so more opportunities like that are really meaningful, engaging, and voluntary, if you will. They seem to be well received and engaging for educators. At the same time, we also want to optimize the few hours that we do have, that we can provide that more consistent messaging and professional learning around. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, thank
Okay.
you. And then I did have another question, because you made the distinction between cultural competency and cultural relevant pedagogy, and moving beyond just inclusion to really thinking about how we do that in our curriculum. And I think that's an important distinction, especially given the inequities that we see in our academic results. Could you speak a little bit more to that distinction and why it's so important?
Are you asking about what we look for in curriculum, or are you asking about how we deliver curriculum?
Kind of what it looks like in delivery and why it's important to have that culturally relevant part to it.
Yeah, we definitely emphasize that we're looking through an assets-based lens at the gifts and the assets of the beautiful diversity of students that are showing up in our classrooms, and how important it is for us as educators to understand the circumstances, the lived experiences that our students are bringing to the classroom, and to consider how we are engaging in ways that are meaningful, that can be connected to through a variety of cultural lenses, that are not one-dimensional, and that that offer a place for all students to connect into the content, whatever that content may be. And that is what we think about as being culturally competent, and really looking at that through that asset lens. I would say that as a system, we're in the beginning stages of that system-wide. And so I'm certainly not here to say that we are there when it comes to these practices. We have a lot of learning yet to do as a system. And, you know, we have educators who are on a broad continuum of understanding about delivering experiences and cultivating experiences in this way that are meaningful for students and that are really assets focused. And working hard to shift any deficit thinking around student experiences and perspectives and, as I said, lived experiences that they're bringing into the classroom. And so that's why we've lifted this up as a really important endeavor for our system, because we know that students are having a variety of experiences in a variety of classrooms, and we'd like to create more consistency in that so that all students, whoever they are, can feel that they have a place where they belong, they find meaningful, and where they can connect to the learning in ways that they can make their own. And so that's what we're striving for, and emphasizing that by no means are we there yet. You know, this has been a journey in BVSD that has been initiated in many ways over the years, over decades, and done in many different ways. And we've really determined how important it is to integrate cultural competency with content. So, because when they're separate, I think I've said this at this table before, when they're separate, they don't necessarily show up in the classroom in ways that students can see, experience, and live as I'm seen and I belong here, and I'm seen as a strength for who I am. And that's what we want to, that's the classroom that we want to curate across all of our schools.
Thank you. I know it's a process and I think it's great, but I think that part you just at the end, right, that link between the content and the experience, I think is really important. So thank you.
I appreciate the question. Thank you.
Dr. Anderson.
Thanks, Laura, for really getting more in depth on some of these issues. I will say that, can you go back a slide? This first goal, I think, is incredibly important. We've done a lot of work with our instructional infrastructure, trying to get folks on the same page, and and we're starting with some professional development, which is really where you need to start. And I think that it'll be incredibly useful for us when we get to the next place where we take some baseline and gather some baseline data on what classes at what schools are kids being asked to think. Right. And I think that, looking at the tasks is the right way to go about doing this. Are we, because really this really will quantify for us what are the expectations in classrooms, right? Are we just asking kids to recall, regurgitate information, or maybe a step beyond that, covering skills? Or we ask them to do some strategic thinking, extended thinking, connecting, critiquing, assessing, those higher level skills. And where is that happening in our school district, right? Because when we get to a place where we expect that of each and every one of our kids, right, is where I think that you'll begin to start to see more and more kids going beyond the minimum of the standards. And we talk about this idea of teaching to the depth of the standard. You can cover concepts, and the miss, I think where we miss sometimes is that you can cover contents, but you haven't taught the standard to the depth of the standard. And depending upon the subject area, a lot of the standards spiral, right? So you might have the same standard, 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, but getting increasingly more complicated. And if you're not looking at the depth of the standard and the depth of knowledge, then you could be teaching the kids the same thing year after year after year without challenging them. And so I do think that this is a very different look at how do we make sure that we're providing challenge and rigor to each and every one of our kids. But because we've been able to kind of figure out a way to quantify that, I think it will give us another look into who's getting challenged in our system, how often and where, and then bring a level of an awareness where, these introductory trainings that we do are important. But when you set an expectation, I do think that the engagement in those types of concepts and training, whether it's at school level or at the district level, will deepen. And so I really like this first one. I just think it's different, and appreciate the team and the work and just rolling this out at a pace where folks can accept. But I would say that you'll see this again. I mean, even after the 2-year cycle is up, I think that there's tons of work and opportunity here. But I do think it's the right way to think about how are our teachers using our core curriculum, challenging all kids in their thinking.
Two more quick questions, and I'm aware of the length of this presentation, so we should keep moving.
Absolutely. I just wanted to comment and kind of ask a follow-up question. I loved that I heard the teacher-to-teacher mentor situation. I wanted to hear a little bit more about that. How many classrooms do we have that happening in? I think the job-embedded professional development is absolutely essential and incredible. So just want to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah, we're really excited about this. So we envisioned over the summer creating this way to lift up some incredible teachers in our system and allow teachers to learn from their colleagues. And so we have so we started at elementary because we wanted to start very refined and then scale out as possible. So we have 2 teachers at each grade level, K through 5, across schools, across BVSD, and they are the mentor teachers. And they actually came together in the fall and created the vision and mission, along with Chris Brecht and Katie Mills, our director of professional learning, and the curriculum, if you will, for this, based on just some foundational values that we shared with them. And then the invitation was put out to teacher mentees to participate, either to self-identify or for principals to identify. And so I don't know the exact number of teacher participants we have. Okay, Chris is looking it up. But they have now had opportunities to go into the teacher mentees, have gone into the mentors' classrooms, observed. We started with language arts only, so observed into reading lessons. And then the teacher mentor facilitates a debrief for those who are observing her. So it could be a couple of teachers at a time. In fact, on March 18th, when we all visited Cole Elementary, 2 of our teacher mentees were in one of the teacher-to-teacher classrooms. I think it was 2nd grade. And then after the debrief, the teacher leads share some tips and tricks, some resources, and then they schedule a time for the mentor teacher to go into the teacher learners' classrooms, observe them, and give them some friendly feedback for improvement. And what we've already heard from the teacher mentees is how powerful this has been, how much they're appreciating not just time to observe and be observed and get feedback, but also getting additional resources, understanding, and tips and tricks. And so that's one of many reasons why we hope to expand this into middle school next. That's our goal. We're following kind of the federal conversation right now about funding that we're currently using that enables us to have this opportunity. And so we shall see about next steps with that. We're hopeful. 16 teacher leaders across 16 participants. Thank you. Across 8 schools. Yeah. So it's an excellent beginning, and we're pretty excited about the possibilities within this. So, if funding in the way that it's currently being funded doesn't work out, we can probably envision a different way to continue this.
This is all super exciting, and I'm incredibly supportive. I've also been having conversations with parents in the community who have students who are identified as gifted and talented and have ALPs, and they are another part of this, the differentiation. And maybe this is in the next section more, but I'd be curious what that increase in the percentage of classrooms with the audited assignments, what does that mean in a classroom where 30% of the kids are gifted and talented and have an ALP? And are they getting, if we're focusing on getting people up to 3 and 4, and a bunch of people in the classroom aren't up to their current grade level 3 and 4, what's happening to the kids that are ready to go further according to their ALP? And how do we do both of those things at once in big classrooms?
Yeah, you're definitely describing a need for growth in BVSD, and that is in the area of all teachers, all educators understanding what is in the ALP and providing enriching, extending, differentiation experiences. And so within the professional learning that we're shaping, differentiation, of course, is not just scaffolding and supporting toward the standard, but also beyond the standard. And so I would say, again, we're definitely in the initial stages of that learning as a system. And it's not an unknown fact that the state provides very little funding for staffing and programming for gifted and talented students. And so what we know is that there's a need for enrichment in the classroom and extension in the classroom as well. We can't rely on solely on the FTE we have available for gifted and talented advisors. And so as we work through differentiation, as data-driven instruction works through differentiation for students who have needs to move toward the standard, we also are very aware of the learning that needs to take place and the continued development around enriching beyond the standard and even deepening that DOK level where needed.
Dr. Anderson, and then Alex.
Just to expand on that a little bit, I mean, I think this is it, right? Like this is what we'd be striving for, is that our talented and gifted students, I mean, all students, but certainly talented and gifted students, have those opportunities, frequent opportunities to extend whatever it is, the concept that's being taught, to get into deep thinking. It comes to this idea of differentiation. And, for us, I think we'll have gotten this right, where all kids can be served in heterogeneous looking classrooms versus homogeneous looking classrooms. Like to get gifted services, you don't have to be pulled out with all other gifted kids to do things. And I think that if you take something like this system wide, that this is the scalable answer for us. But it's part of the rhythm of the teacher, of the lesson planning, of the DDI, where it's not just, okay, who's not meeting the standard? Like, how many kids have we moved beyond the standard, right? And be able to connect their thinking in other ways. If you were to look at gifted programming, that's more of a pull-out type of a model, which happens across the country, doesn't happen here. When they get into those environments, they're focused really on that strategic thinking and extended thinking, project-based, right? Creating, critiquing, assessing, evaluating, synthesizing information. And for us to get where we need to be to support all learners, we have to have the training, the framework, the understanding, and the ability for all of our teachers to differentiate, regardless whether a kid chooses a neighborhood school, a focus school, some other type of program, that they should be able to get that in every classroom across the district.
Alex.
Thank you. I'm reassured by that leadership and the value and the priorities that we have, and also sort of sobered by the things I hear from people, parents of kids who are trying to get stuff done. And I mean, I know that what we measure is what's important, and so that goal is great to get the kids up to level 3 and 4. But making sure that doesn't get lost, as that's the purpose, is to get kids up to that and not have the district prioritization on all kids. And especially in the conversations I have, I mean, I think in many levels, the gifted and talented framing in language is counterproductive, honestly. The resources shouldn't be considered the $200 we get for gifted and talented. It should be the $15,000 we lose when they leave the district. And so it's $15,200 that we have for students who have ALPs. And if we're not providing that service, we don't have those kids and we lose the $15,000 and the $200. So I think that's where supporting, and this is for the second part, is like, how do we support the implementation of the true, differentiation so that all the kids are doing well. And then how do we tie that into our work on dyslexia and our work on our neurodivergent policies and the twice exceptional kids within that group? There's so many ways we can identify the kids whose parents are really frustrated that their kid is bored and then acting out because they're bored. And then everything else is more complicated until they leave to go to Macintosh or Bixby. So, I mean, I just encourage us to think about what we're measuring, the incentive we're sending to the principals to emphasize that DDI is for all the kids, and the MTSS includes multiple tiers that aren't always related, and that and I realize that's really hard. And we as a board are directing the highest level of prioritization, and you as the district administration are figuring out what to prioritize with very limited hours to work with principals who then have very limited hours to work with the teacher. So this is like pushing something super heavy with a very wet noodle. So, I mean, but I do want us to not lose track of all the kids. And I think the framing of kids with ALPs as gifted and talented, and then talking about the resources in terms of the incremental resources is wrong. They're kids with unique needs that need to be addressed in a multi-tiered system of supports who have a little bit more money than the average student, but it's all the money that goes to each of those kids. Because often if the parents have the resources to have gotten them over-identified, which we do, then they often have the resources to leave our district in a declining enrollment. That's bad for everybody else too. So I just want to speak to that.
Okay, Dr. Anderson, and then Kitty, and then we're only on slide 5 and there's 50 slides. So then we're gonna really move on, okay?
I appreciate that, Alex. I appreciate the view of that all of our resources should be to support all students. And I do think that, you know, as we work with our community around how do we serve gifted students, how do we serve twice exceptional students, how do we serve students with special needs, how do we serve multi-language learners, how do we do that in heterogeneous environments versus folks thinking, if I don't have a homogeneous environment, then my kid isn't being served, right? And when you think about inclusion, I think inclusion can go both ways, right? So students with special needs want to be included in regular classes, but students that are talented and gifted should also be able to be served in those classes. So, you know, for some people, depending on where they've come from or what they've been used to, right, that's probably a change in thinking, right? But I will say that this measure, while it wasn't like embedded in there solely for gifted and talented kids, I do think that this is the solution, right? That if kids are being challenged with their thinking within core content, and then we give appropriate opportunities to accelerate when kids are thinking well beyond the standards that are at grade level and know and understand that content and are ready for more challenging and rigorous content that, you know, we've done a lot of that. We'll talk about math acceleration and how we've actually, over the past couple of years, have done a really good job of creating more accessible pathways, not just for parents who can open enroll to the school that happens to have enough kids to have an in-person teacher. So it's that acceleration and it's that thinking that I do believe come at the core of serving all kids, but especially students that are identified and gifted and talented. And just as a reminder, gifted and talented isn't, you know, some kids are gifted and talented in some areas and not others, right? So, you know, I think that I just want to keep that in perspective, which is why the ALPs are important, just like IEPs are important, just like 504s are important. But it's the core classroom. I think that we will have arrived if a kid can show up to their neighborhood school with whatever teacher they get and can get access to the type of instruction that challenges them and gets the best out of them each and every day. And so, you know, to do that, you have to have the strong instructional infrastructure, quality curriculum, opportunities to extend and deepen thinking as an expectation. And so, you know, again, I think that this depth of knowledge is something that takes a little bit of time to become more common, but we've proven that we can do it. It just takes some time and focus. And so do appreciate the conversation around this topic.
Kitty.
So I have a comment about the high absenteeism at some of the PD. I understand that there are times when PD is not relevant to experienced teachers because we've offered things that perhaps they already knew. And I know we're working on that, but I would really like to see us come up with a way to ensure that the teachers do come and attend the PDs. It, it's part of professionalism, but when we're talking about something as important as what we've been talking about here, I just would encourage us to think of a way, because I know there's the contract that gives them certain rights and the quality in past PDs perhaps, but I just want to put that out there because this is crucial.
Just to be clear, we don't have any, we have not collected any information that would lead us to believe that teachers are not coming to PD because it's not, they don't find it to be valuable, which it could be the case. We don't have that evidence, but my instincts are that it is more about time than PD. I think that, for many of our everybody, right, even around this table, board, others, right, time is the limited resource we're all wrestling with, right? And so I know that some teachers have taken those days off to be able to grade papers, to be able to do other things related to their job, and they take their own personal time to do those things. So I do think it's challenging. I mean, we're working in good faith with BVEA through this MOU, and knowing and understanding that we are really trying to provide learning, and that I think that all professionals, especially educators, are wrestling with this concept of time. And to the extent that we're able to come up with some solutions, I think that will be helpful moving forward. But I just wanted to be, it's just tricky. I do think that time is the limited factor that folks are wrestling with as they make some of these choices and decisions.
Good morning, Board President Rajpal, members of the board, Dr. Anderson. Thank you again for having us this morning. I'm going to follow a similar structure as Dr. De La Cruz through these slides as well. We're going to focus in on tiered supports, what we're calling the Next Best Step initiative. And really this can be broken down into three major focus areas here. Number one is our application of MTSS specific to academic intervention. Then also, how are we documenting, what data and information are we looking at? And then where are we within our implementation of DDI? Those are the three major buckets there. So MTSS and the focus on MTSS isn't new for BVSD. What I would say is a benefit of our strategic planning is the intentionality to which we're approaching MTSS. So we have ongoing professional learning, and I think what you'll see here is the benefit of an intentional step in how we're addressing the specific needs within schools around all 5 areas of the multi-tiered system of support that they're implementing. So we want to be able to see that we have evidence of MTSS within those schools. We want to think through the accuracy of the documentation. And then ultimately at the end of next year, we want to see 100% of schools hitting what we term core implementation of data-driven instruction. So as we take a look at this, we're in progress on both of these milestones. So 100% successfully document evidence of MTSS. Our wonderful director of MTSS, Shannon Gamble, is leading the MTSS team in individual conversations with each of our schools to identify those specific areas where they feel like they have the resources that they need, that they're able to do the best practices that we've laid out within MTSS within each of those essential components, identify areas of growth. We can document that. We can understand exactly where each school is, and that is going to give us the baseline information we need to be incredibly intentional with our professional learning, with how we're providing resources to those schools, with ensuring that they're able to look at the right data to make good decisions on behalf of students all the way across the board. So that's the level of intentionality that we are aiming to get to, and those will be completed at the end of this school year. Then what you'll see is it's really a step 1 and a step 2. The step 2 of that would then be, as we see a heat map, as you will, of where we see gaps or where we see needs within those different areas of MTSS, we'll be able to provide supports to it. We're also going to be able to see where the data is sufficient, where we feel like we have the right tools, where we feel like we need to provide additional support to schools to document those things well, to make good decisions. So step 1 is having a comprehensive look. Where are you at within each of those different sections? Step 2 is how can we make sure that you're being very intentional with the data that you're looking at within each of those areas. So both of those are in progress, and you're going to hear more about the intervention and how we're increasing in that moving into next year as a part of this 2-year plan. And then finally, 100% of schools reaching core level of DDI. So we have talked about the DDI rubric in previous sessions with the board. This is a differentiated support. We've seen a lot of success in targeted support of DDI implementation in BVSD. We're continuing with that model. So you'll see that we have our strategic plan support teams targeting support for 10 schools. We have data-driven implementation specialists targeting support within 10 schools, professional learning around 90-day plan structures and how we're specifically aligning those to support schools with leveraging DDI moving forward. And then we have the UVA cohort expansion with this year being able to add on Pioneer, Columbine, and Uni Hill. I'm sorry, for the 25-26 school year. And for this year, having Casey, Angevine, and Broomfield Heights Middle School. So that targeted approach around supporting the implementation of DDI ultimately resulting in all of those schools being a core implementation by the end of next year.
Lania, and then Jason.
Thanks, Chris.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit more about when this professional learning is occurring? Is this occurring when it's school-based and the principal's guiding it?
So we have leader-based professional learning around multi-tier systems of supports from a structural standpoint. How are they leveraging their time to make sure that they can have good leadership team meetings? What data are they able to pull? What are they able to look at? How are they facilitating those structures? So that's the leadership professional learning. I think what we're going to see is the ability to go a level deeper and differentiate that support moving into next year as we identify the specific areas as a result of this end of year consultation that Shannon Gamble and her team are leading this year.
Jason and Alex.
Yeah, maybe along similar lines, just on that second goal about audited intervention records and accuracy. Can you give us an example? I think you started a little bit. What would an inaccurate record look like versus an accurate record? Like, what are we aiming for? What is not kind of what is missing currently?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think there's a couple of different ways to look at it. It's very much tool dependent. So I think we look at middle school and some of the tools we had with Read 180 and Math 180. We're able to look at some of those, identify data that supports where they are along the progress through that intervention. So we can look at that holistically, but that's not the case necessarily at all grade levels. So depending on what that intervention is by classroom, it may vary how they would document the progress being made on that. So there's some consistent practices I think that we can work towards, but it also is dependent on the tool. So we would say, is this the appropriate tool that we're leveraging? Do we feel like it's useful? If so, this is the consistent documentation that we want to be able to see to be able to support you in that. Or do we feel like there's a need in that area? So it does vary a little bit by tool. And then also depending on the intervention itself, there could be different things to be documenting within different platforms. So we want to create some consistency around that as a result of this initiative.
And I know it's hard and it's also part of the professional development, but if we ask kind of average teachers about this section on intervention records, what do you think the response would be? Obviously school dependent, I know this is ongoing professional development and in progress goal, but do you think the average teacher would understand what this means and what they need to document and what you mean by these tools?
I think they would say something similar to what I just said around tools. So I have had the opportunity to sit in on some of the MTSS consultation meetings, which this is obviously a part of those conversations. And I think one of the sentiments is, I don't know that we have the right tool, or if we have the right tool, is this the right thing that we need to be looking at in order to make great decisions for it? So those are questions I think teachers would have. They would say, I don't, depending on the level, maybe I have the right tool, maybe I don't. How do I know? So I think that would be the sentiment that I would hear. And then I do think that there's documentation that's happening throughout the system around these interventions as well. And so it's just coming alongside schools to say, what are we doing with that data to help you make a best informed next decision on behalf of kids?
Again, very impressed by this and realize the intelligence and the smartness behind focusing on these schools to make the change. I'm curious, MTSS and DDI and these approaches are things that have been around, for 15 years and are part of standard best practice in American public ed these days. So in our other 41 or 46 schools, depending on how you count it, how many principals on their own are working with their teachers on their own to also implement a strong MTSS and DDI system that are not part of these cohorts of our focus? So if we have a strategic plan support team in 10 schools, I'm curious what the status is outside the strategic plan cohort schools in terms of these practices and support, like just a overachieving principal would want to do with their overachieving staff and our greatly, we have so many great employees. So what happens outside the target?
Yeah, so there's 10 schools that are receiving it from the strategic plan support teams. We also have 10 those are 10 additional schools that are receiving specific DDI support. And then I would say overall, we have had professional learning with our leadership team across every school around the importance of what an MTSS structure needs to look like and how they can work with their staff to improve whatever those structures are. So that's the first layer to it. And as I said, I think the thing that's really exciting about this to me is that it allows us to get to a level of intentionality outside of general MTSS best practice and talking about universal tier 1 through tier 3 and being really specific with what are the areas with the implementation of MTSS within the specific essential component that we can support you with, that we can help you stand up that maybe isn't there or that you have questions on. It allows us to get to that level, which I think is going to bring us from good to great.
And then one thing I would add to that is that 100% of our schools have engaged in a structured conversation, like an interview, if you will, around their MTSS practices. So that's been gathering baseline data. And from there, we'll know what differentiated support schools need. And also it gives us an understanding of exactly what you just asked, which is which schools are at which schools are principals leading this work. And then also 100% of our schools are engaged in the DDI conversation because our executive directors are in schools checking in on where schools are with the DDI implementation rubric. And so even schools that aren't in a cohort, or not on a caseload, are similarly or consistently involved in these conversations and the investigation around what additional support they need, where they are, and where they're going next.
I have a question about the DDI rubrics. When we were visiting schools, some of the school leaders reflected on how they thought that they were doing with their DDI rubric. And while that internal reflection is important, there is some external, I'm assuming executive directors or somebody's coming in and looking as well. And then if there's not an alignment between how the school perceives they're doing and maybe how the executive director or district administration believe that they're doing, what happens in those conversations in between to make sure that, as we're embarking on this, that we continue to be aligned in what that process and what it means.
I'll start and let Chris chime in. So they have become a collaborative approach now. The very first assessment was a self-assessment that we talked about last spring. And since then, it's become a collaborative approach. So the executive director, the MTSS director, the director of teaching and learning, as well as the school leadership and others are engaged in the assessment of where the school is. And then if the school is in the strategic plan cohort, then we have those folks who are also engaged in the conversation. So there's more of a checks and balance in place now. It's not simply a self-assessment. And then you had a second part to your question.
Yeah, it was if it was a self-assessment and an external assessment and those weren't aligned, there's a mismatch between what the school thought they were doing and then how does that conversation look like to make sure that we're moving in the right direction? They understand where their deficit is, or in ways that they thought maybe did not believe that they had a deficit.
Yeah, our executive directors and our strategic plan support team administrators, as well as our directors of teaching and learning, are doing a great job of asking questions and providing prompts and asking even for evidence of application of particular tenets within the core implementation. And so with the request for evidence really comes that system of the difference between self-perception and actualization. Is there anything you would add to that, Chris?
Per usual, you took the words right out of my mouth. I would add the term artifact. So when we look back to the implementation guide, that resource, one of the things that we anchor to are those artifacts that we can look at, not just say the DDI calendar that you have created that's specific for your school, but we can ask some good questions around like, how does this compare to some other DDI calendars? Where do we see some differences? Where do we see opportunities for growth in that? So every one of those conversations, even outside of those that have a DDI implementation specialist or a UVA cohort or a strategic plan support team person sitting with them, even outside of that, they're having the conversations of, I see the growth area from this exemplar, this artifact to this part, and getting better every day in it.
Thank you for that. Alex?
I have one more question for thinking about layers of how people can understand what we're doing and how well it's going. I'm really curious what you would tell a parent about what they would observe in their child's experience. So when the kid gets home from school and talks about their day, that would let them know how well this is working for a student. Like, what would a parent ask about of their teacher or their principal? And what would they ask their kid about and have a sense of how well this is working in terms from a parent perspective?
How well data-driven instruction and MTSS are working.
Yeah.
Definitely inquiring about investigating interest levels of students, interest-based opportunities. You pointed earlier to, students who are bored. We're definitely looking for the opposite of that in students, feeling that they're learning things that are meaningful, that they're engaged with, that they want to talk about. And, as parents, we know that those are indicators that our students are interested and engaged in what they're doing at school. When our educators are utilizing data-driven instruction, students who are either need extension and enrichment are having opportunities to go deeper with the content, and students who are struggling are having opportunities to access the learning. And so as a parent, I would be looking for indicators that my student was either feeling challenged and interested or feeling successful. However, the questions about that, are asked at the dinner table or in the car.
Follow up to that, and I know we'll get to the social emotional learning and the wellness stuff later, but I'd like to connect those two circles in the Venn diagram to get to the students not being anxious, not being bored, not acting out, not disrupting other students' learning because more of them are engaged. And I just think that's a great part of the goal to get to, is having no kid come home and all kids can say, nothing, I didn't learn anything today. That's sort of being a kid, but having them be excited, feel the excitement, have them not come home ready to burst because they were masking all day, are, the kind of things that we want to see, that parents would see and go, oh, this is working in my school. So nice.
And I'll just add, I think you'll be pleased to see that we do have simple or similar action items within MTSS around valued and included as well to reflect that.
Dr. Anderson?
Has anybody picked up that this UIP is not like others you've seen, or others that this district has written and turned in before? As we're getting into this nuanced, detailed, high expectations, supports, measuring, monitoring the accountability, setting the expectations. I want to recognize this moment of the depth of conversation we are able to have today. I just think it's the sign of a solid UIP that actually sets high expectations, pushes people to do their best, honestly answers how well we're doing, and looks to provide the supports to get folks to do better in all these areas. And so I just thought I figure we have plenty of time, Nicole, so I just thought I'd start to commentate on kind of what we're going through. I just think I think it's a neat moment of evolution for this district as we think about this UIP, how it's working, how we're monitoring it. And so just appreciate everybody.
All right, let's talk about post-secondary preparation, or what we've entitled Defining the Destination. So we're really, these UIP action steps and implementation milestones are in response to the UIP root cause that we investigated and indicated on the UIP around limited work-based learning opportunities, which we're expanding, although we do have continued growth in this area. Some of the key actions that we identified to expand work-based learning really are experiences at the foundation of the expansion and are also indicated on the State of Colorado Work-Based Learning Continuum of best practices. And they are to publish paths of coursework for students based on career interests, to establish and expand career exploration opportunities in PK through 8, and to promote opportunities and monitor accelerated math course enrollments, which I'll talk about in just a moment. We're going to look at the implementation milestones on the next slide, but what you see is they're summarized here as those published pathways, the 100% of schools offering one or more career exploration opportunities in the 25-26 school year. And what you don't see here on the implementation milestones is one for promoting opportunities and monitoring advanced math course enrollment. And the reason for that is because that's work that we really initiated last year. And so it's a continuation of that work this year. And Jonathan's going to speak more about that in terms of data, but I wanted to explain why you don't see a matching bullet there, and you didn't on the UIP either. So let's go to the next slide. I'm going to let Bianca expand on all of this, but just as a quick summary of the implementation milestones on this strategic objective, in terms of publishing 3 or more pathways on the district website and referencing those in secondary course registration materials. We're developing those this year in conjunction with our bond work and in alignment with the development of our CTE expansion. We've had 2 high school leadership work sessions on this topic, which Bianca will talk more about. In terms of career exploration in PK through 8, we made tremendous progress on this year. In short, Bianca's also going to expand on that, but in short, we've increased our elementaries participating in Dare to Dream activities from just 1 last year to 14 this year. And our goal is that all elementaries will be participating next year. That's been really big work on the team's part. We've launched the platform to support career exploration and tracking, the BVSD platform for that. We've had professional learning with our leaders on CTE expansion, on creating career exploration opportunities, and tracking work-based learning. So the work in post-secondary preparation has really included a lot of leader professional learning as well. And those have included in instructional leadership time on decreasing disproportionality in advanced courses, learning at PK-12 around advanced coursework and career exploration. We've had a couple of sessions on that. CTE pathways work sessions with high school leaders. And then, of course, our Dare to Dream expansion at elementary schools. So Bianca's going to be providing additional detail about our work in this area. She has a lot of content to share. So we're going to pause after she shares before we dive into the advanced mathematics coursework enrollment. And then Jonathan will share that, and then we'll pause again. So that way we can dive into what Dr. Gallegos is going to share.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Dr. De La Cruz. Thank you, Amala. Before I jump into the details of how we are on track to have more than 3 CTE paths published on district website and referenced in secondary course registration materials, I'd like to take a moment to briefly talk about how we're giving a fresh look and feel to what we used to call career and technical education, or CTE. In BVSD, we are now calling CTE Accelerate. Through Accelerate pathways in BVSD, students have the opportunity to accelerate their future, accelerate their career, accelerate what they are passionate about, and are prepared to succeed in life after graduation. Back in the day when we were in school, the old vocational education programming used to target specific students who at that time, the adults maybe thought, oh, they're not college bound students. And today, Accelerate is for all students, because all students in BVSD are capable of thriving in rigorous courses that prepare them for their futures, where students earn industry certifications and college credits, get hands-on learning experiences through courses, and work-based learning opportunities as well. As the board is aware, thanks to our voters, we are expanding and improving spaces where students engage in Accelerate Pathways in BVSD. Along with the beautiful new spaces that are being built, we have had 2 planning sessions with high school administrators, and we'll have a 3rd session in May to finalize designing and publishing CTE pathways and ensuring that they are referenced in secondary course registration materials. We will have a final session with high school administrators in May. And just a quick summary of what is included as the requirements in Accelerate Pathways is that students have to have access to high demand, high wage careers through that pathway. And so the way that that's defined for high demand careers are those that have an average, above average job demand statewide. For high wage careers are those that are above average wages statewide as well. Another requirement is that courses are CTE eligible through the state approved program. And so there's several requirements there that our CTE director works with high school principals on as well. In addition, a pathway partnership must be established with at least one business entity. And Pathways also must provide the opportunity to complete at least one of the 4 quadrants of Grad PLUS. And within the first academic year of providing a pathway, all pathway teachers must obtain an applicable CTE credential that's governed through the Colorado Department of Education. And then, of course, students should have the opportunity to earn industry certifications if that is available within the pathway. Thank you, Amala. Next, please. Boulder Tech is also getting bigger and better. Since 1967, Boulder Tech has served as the Career and Technical Education Center for Boulder Valley School District. While it has also always served as an important facility for students in our community, our program is evolving to meet the demands of our current and future workforce needs. Look at these photos. Amazing. Next, Amala, please. Today, we are proud to unveil Boulder Tech's new name, which is Apex. As you know, Apex means the highest point, which truly reflects our program's mission to help students to reach higher and farther, and they can in most higher and farther than they can in most traditional settings. So through hands-on career-focused experiential learning, students are able to accelerate their career and their future so they can succeed in whatever they choose to do once they graduate from BVSD. Apex will continue to build on Boulder Tech's history of empowering students to gain industry certifications, earn college credit, and participate in hands-on work-based learning experiences. At Boulder Tech, we currently offer 14 diverse programs in a variety of industry fields. With the upcoming bond renovation work, we look forward to expanding so that we can provide new offerings in health science, aviation, and aerospace, manufacturing, and computer science. And we will begin to transition to our new name with full implementation set for the fall of 2025. But you can join me in starting to call it Apex if you'd like, as of today. We do have a video to show you all that Amala, Chris. That Chris will play for us.
We're at the Boulder Tech Center in the collision repair department.
This is our scenario room for the EMS program.
This is the construction trades shop.
We're in the welding facility at Boulder Tech.
Boulder Tech is going to become Apex. It is a definite name change that we need to have happen.
I think the rebranding is so cool because Apex kind of means like reaching a peak, and I think that this school is about reaching a full potential because you get to explore all the things you're interested in.
Some of my students were.
The goal of the district and the school is that realizing that leaving here means that you've left at the top of your field, the top of your education, that you've kind of hit the apex.
Cinnamon rolls.
Like I'm learning so much here.
I'm OSHA certified and carpentry certified. Right now I'm aiming for my plumbing certificate.
Right now I'm taking an internship doing some construction management stuff, which is super duper cool.
It's really fun to be able to try something new that you wouldn't necessarily know you like until you try it.
I think it's a cool way to get your feet wet.
Some of the benefits are college credit, internship opportunities, apprenticeship opportunities, work-based learning, higher level education, critical thinking skills, teamwork, managerial experience. That's just what I can think of off the top of my head.
It makes them feel good about themselves, and that's what we need.
I've got students that weren't considering college and now they are. And part of it is that academic push that we're doing on them in their lives right now. And they're like, well, maybe I can do college.
Now I know what I want to do. I'm thinking about construction management. I know where I can do it. I'm planning on going to CSU. And I know that it pays well, so I think that's awesome.
Every day I just look forward to coming here because it's like I chose what I wanted to do.
My students are so just excited to be here, and they're really passionate. They really care, and it gives me a lot of hope for the future.
I love this place without a doubt.
We are about to go through a big renovation.
That's awesome.
We are starting construction in March.
I think it's really cool that they're getting so much support from the community for a program like this.
When our new space is ready, it's going to be big and bright and open. There's going to be 4 new health science programs, and they're all going to be located down this hallway. These walls over here are going to be coming down to make a nice bright space for our teacher academy. Over here is going to be aviation and video production, and over here is going to be computer science. This unused space is going to become an extension for construction, outdoor learning, and a space for students.
The way I see the new designs and all that kind of stuff, this place is going to look great. I think we're showing the students that you're going to get a quality education here. You're going to get something that's going to allow you to not just find a job, something that's going to give them their passion to enjoy what they do every day.
Oh yeah.
We're just getting bigger and better year after year.
Don't we want to go back to high school? Thank you. All right. So a key element in the creation and publication of Accelerate Pathways is students' ability to earn industry certifications. Some of the top industry certifications earned among students in BVSD include, and this is district-wide, not just at the Boulder Tech Center or Apex, is visual design using Adobe Photoshop, Autodesk, High School of Business, and obviously certificates in the skilled trades. So this slide shows our certifications and the students earning those certifications. We do have, as you can see from these numbers, students earning multiple certifications. So this year we have launched the use of Pathfinder software via BVSD's single sign-on portal. Pathfinder is a personalized career exploration tool that provides students with an opportunity to learn about and participate in career exploration using a cohesive platform. We are excited to continue to align BVSD academic opportunities as well as outside career connected opportunities in a user-friendly, accessible environment that benefits students. Pathfinder is a one-stop shop for students to explore CTE pathways, career and work-based learning at their fingertips as well. So you can see here that we've had district-wide 6,500 students at the elementary, middle, and high school levels access career exploration opportunities this year. All CTE teachers have been trained in Pathfinder, and all middle school counselors have been trained as well. And we are working closely with industry partners so that we can list career exploration opportunities for students through Pathfinder as well. Dare to Dream provides, as you all know, elementary students with career exploration opportunities. The BVSD Work-Based Learning Coordinator puts together turnkey career exploration activities that fosters the opportunity for elementary students to explore various career paths. Schools partner with parents and community members to have experts from different industries come in to talk with students about their career and the path they took to get there. We know that children need to be exposed to a variety of careers beyond what their family has access to. So Dare to Dream plants a seed among students so that they can know that they can become anyone they want to become in the future, and they need to be able to know what skills and education they need in order to access those goals that they set for themselves. As Dr. De La Cruz mentioned, we have gone from one founding school, which is Flatirons Elementary School, to 14 schools this year. And next year, all elementary schools will engage in Dare to Dream, where we will have opportunities for students to learn about various career opportunities and have the chance to meet professionals in various fields. And our high school, our elementary principals are very excited about that. They've been sharing best practices and are really excited about that as well. This year, about 1/4 of middle school students had a direct career exploration opportunity, and 1/4 of middle school students also worked on their ICAP via Pathfinder. Through site visits, career days, Discover Your Dream challenges, middle school students and ICAP activities, students are able to anchor in what they are passionate about, what kinds of problems they want to solve, and what kind of career pathways they want to take in the future. Board members, you have a handout of Colorado's work-based learning continuum. It looks like this. The continuum demonstrates activities that occur in part or in whole in the workplace, providing the learning with hands-on real-world experience. The continuum includes on the left side examples of how students learn about work. And in these opportunities, those are coordinated by educators. On the right side of the continuum, you'll notice examples of students learning at work. And these opportunities are coordinated by businesses. The number that you see in orange is a combination of BVSD initiated and student initiated work-based learning experiences outside of the school that go across the work-based learning continuum. So how have we in BVSD supported more work-based learning opportunities? We have expanded the number of BVSD courses connected to work-based learning, and 265 students are engaged in those courses. With that said, this is still a great area for growth and opportunity for us as we move forward in year 2 of our UIP. While we are building some additional courses to help us track these experiences from 2 courses last year to 8 courses this year, we have more work to do to ensure that students engage in work-based learning opportunities that align to their career aspirations and will support them in becoming more prepared for post-secondary graduate success. So all of these celebrations and accomplishments are happening because of our Grad Plus framework. And on that note, I'll take the time to share a few celebrations in each of the 4 quadrants. And we also have folks from our Grad Plus team here. They're here, and I just want to give them a quick shout out. Thank you for all that you all do. You're doing fantastic work for students. Thank you. All right, so for the Seal of Biliteracy, the graduating class of 2025 will be the 6th group of BVSD students to earn the Seal of Biliteracy. 620 students earned the Seal of Biliteracy in 17 different languages. In addition to the 5 world languages and ASL that we offer in BVSD, students earn the seal in Chinese, Filipino, Hindi, Italian, Japanese, Korean, Polish, Russian, Thai, Turkish, Ukrainian, and Vietnamese. This slide demonstrates the proportionality for the attainment of the Seal of Biliteracy among various groups of students. The use of the STAMP assessment, so Standards-Based Measurement of Proficiency assessment, a general language proficiency assessment in reading, writing, listening, and speaking, has allowed BVSD to increase the number of heritage Spanish speaking students and heritage speaking students among various languages to qualify for the seal of biliteracy. Students have also demonstrated a high level of language in those not taught in BVSD. The STAMP assessment allows students to demonstrate their ability to understand, speak, read, and write in their home language, which, as you all know, in BVSD, we are bilingual and proud. So this is something that we're very proud about. BVSD truly values bilingualism, multilingualism among students, and their strengths and talents as well. The graduating class of 2020, and that's it. Sorry, I have that again. All right. So a little bit for college before graduation. I believe you all have heard about CLEP testing before, but the college level examination program, or CLEP test, is one of the many ways in which students across the nation can earn college credits, and we're doing that in BVSD as well. CLEP testing is governed by the College Board and has been in existence for over 50 years. Nationwide, scholars are able to take the test in 38 subjects. 34,000 colleges across the US award students college credit based on their test score results. These tests are similar to the AP tests in that they are governed through the College Board and are accepted at most post-secondary institutions for college credit. Here in Colorado, all post-secondary institutions accept CLEP exams for credits. The CLEP test increases access to college as students can earn up to 16 college credits, accepted at, as I mentioned, all public state institutions. And that then makes them qualify for 1 free year of college tuition via Ascent, which I'll talk about a little bit more in upcoming slides. We went from 1 testing site last year to 3 testing sites this year. In BVSD, we began leveraging CLEP testing by continuing to elevate bilingualism as a superpower, giving students access to taking the CLEP test in Spanish. 2 years ago, we had 14 students pass the Spanish CLEP test at Centaurus High School. All of these students earned a minimum of 9 college credits based on their test board, which then also made them eligible for the Ascent program, which we know is a free year of tuition at participating colleges. Last year, 150 students took the CLEP test. By the end of the school year, 75% of the students testing are students of color, and nearly all students are the first in their family to go to college. By passing this 80-minute test, our students can earn up to 16 college credits, or nearly a minor in Spanish, upon entry into college. This year, 300 students will collectively earn more than 2,500 college credits before they graduate from high school, and Impact on Education has generously offered to cover the cost of those exams. So of course, we always want to say thank you to Impact on Education for making that possible. And I just want to mention really quickly, I have had the opportunity to personally witness a young, one of our BVSD students, a Latina student, come out of the CLEP testing. And the nice thing is that unless you have the writing portion, you know right away what your score is and how many credits that translates into. But last year I had the opportunity to have one of our Latina students come out of the testing. She's a first generation high school graduate and a first generation college attendee. And just to be able to witness her mom congratulate her and give her a hug and say felicidades, and to know that like that one test opens up an immediate pathway to change the trajectory of her life. She's finishing her first year of college, and she's continuing on. So this is really fantastic for our students. We're so proud of them. All right. So BVSD students are accessing and thriving in college before graduation. It is one thing to access college credits while in high school. It's another thing to have such a high pass rate. Check that out. 94% pass rate. This is a huge testament to our educators, to our students, and all of the hard work that they're doing. So you can see that BVSD students are taking nearly 1,500 college credits. And I couldn't be more proud of that pass rate. Okay, as this slide shows, the College Before Graduation program continues to grow very dramatically. A major benefit of this rapid growth is that college opportunities are now more accessible to our students than ever. Our main focus is in bringing these opportunities directly into the high schools. This year alone, the number of BVSD teachers who are teaching Front Range community courses increased by more than 2.5 times. Through a series of CDE grants, we have provided 9 teachers with tuition reimbursement to cover the cost to graduate coursework required to meet credentialing requirements. And check out those savings. If our students would have gone out to Front Range to take these courses on their campuses, they would have paid around $1.2 million. Thanks to having our own BVSD teachers credentialed, students are able to take these courses for free. This slide demonstrates student group participation increase in concurrent and dual enrollment. And as usual, we always want to make sure that we provide the disaggregated data as well, as this is an important data point for us in our district. And so I mentioned a little bit before about Ascent. So Ascent is a state-funded program that allows students to access a free year of college tuition and fees at Front Range Community College, Metro State University of Denver, and we have a new partner at Northern University. We have partners at Ames Community College, Front Range, Metro State University, University of Colorado Springs, University of Northern Colorado, and Western State University. And so we have had a dramatic increase in students participating in Ascent, a program, of course, where if students earn 9 college credits before they graduate, they are eligible to participate and be able to have their first year paid for. So how that works is the students stay enrolled with us in BVSD. They still walk across the stage and still get to do their rite of passage of having their graduation ceremony, etc. But we hold their diploma because they stay enrolled as BVSD students as a 5th year student, and then we get state funding for them, and then we pay the community college rate for those students. But we are keeping an eye on this program as the funds available from the state could be affected by future funding shortfalls. And so in our communication with families, we've let them know that, you know, it's important to have a backup plan, but as of now, it's still in place. So, but we're keeping a close eye on it. Next slide, please. So in one of the things that we want to be able to mention is just what this means for students. As we can see here, we've had a 95% student eligibility increase in BVSD. And so for us, this is important because it doesn't just mean that students are eligible for a free year of tuition. This is epic because 977 of our graduating students have earned a minimum of 9 college credits while still in high school, which think about that. When we were in high school, most of us, you know, we had our high school credits, and that's great, but we want students to have more than that. So these students have proven to themselves that they are scholars capable of engaging in rigorous college courses. The research is clear on what this means for students. These students are more likely to enroll in college within 1 year of high school graduation and persist through college. These students are more likely to earn a credential, a degree, or a certificate compared to students who have not earned college credit before graduation. These students are more likely to have higher earnings after completing their post-secondary education. And of course, these students have saved time and money. And we know that the research also shows, and we've seen it personally as well, that students increase their confidence as they're prepared for the demands of college as well. Okay, you all remember last spring we began celebrating our students who are graduating with more than a diploma. We have, the previous slides indicate all the grades and the various opportunities within the Grad Plus framework that prepares students to graduate with more than just a diploma. But the following slides demonstrate this year's graduating seniors' accomplishments at the highest level of achievement of each of the 4 quadrants. Thank you. So students will be recognized for achieving the top levels in each quadrant by being recognized at graduation with a Grad Plus medal and a corresponding pin to which quadrant they were able to achieve in. So for example, students who have earned college credit with the college credit pin have earned a minimum of 3 college credits. Students who have earned the industry certification pin have earned a certification that is recognized by the Colorado Department of Education. And as the board knows, the seal of biliteracy is nationally recognized and determined by standardized national requirements. And for work-based learning, these are students who have completed a work-based learning course with credit or have completed a verified work-based learning experience through a CTA program or the SWAP program or the transitions program or a work-based learning tracker and portfolio. Okay, thanks, Chris. All right, as you can see, although Grad Plus is in its 3rd year, we continue to celebrate students' achievements in the Grad Plus framework. We are up from 75% from last year's class of 2024 to 86% of the class of 2025 earning a Grad Plus achievement. So this is a testament to the work that we're doing to create the right conditions for students to thrive and achieve in all 4 quadrants. And we're excited to continue to improve and grow and make things bigger and better for our students. All right, and so with that, we're happy to take questions or engage in a conversation as well.
Thank you for that, Bianca. That was a lot of information, board members. I'm sure we're going to have a lot of questions. Lillian, I saw your hand up. Go first, and then I believe Kitty.
Congratulations to you and your team. A lot of really strong work here. Wondering if I could go back to slide 14 on the accelerate pathways. And I hope I heard it correctly that we have industry partners. We're required to have an industry partner in each of those pathways. Is that correct?
Yes.
Is there a way, just when we see this in the future, to list who that industry partner is? Because I certainly would like to be out in the community thanking them for engaging with us.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yes. We can also include who are the folks who serve on the advisory boards as well, because all accelerate pathways have to have an advisory board comprised of a minimum of 51% industry experts. And so we can include that as well.
So I never cease to be impressed by all of the work we're doing on Grad Plus. So kudos to everybody working on this. I think that really helps make us a standout district. I've got a couple of questions. So in terms of students getting industry certifications, and I know I'm sure you don't have an exact answer to this, but I'm wondering how long, if students waited till after graduation and then they pursued these certifications, how long would that take them approximately?
Approximately a year,
Okay.
a minimum. Some programs are 2 years, but definitely a year.
So we're saving them that much time, and during that year, they would have to be working, and so I think that's great. What is ICAP?
ICAP is the individual career and plan.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. And on the college before graduation, I know future funding is never guaranteed. Would a funding cut prevent us from, I mean, I know it would prevent us from paying for a year of tuition, but how would it impact our concurrent enrollment and the ability to earn college credits in your standard 4 years of high school?
Say that again.
Okay, so we were talking about not knowing for sure about the stability of funding for paying for college. For a cent. Would that impact what happens during the first 4 years of college when kids can have a concurrent enrollment and get college credits?
You're asking at the university level?
No. So the kids, our high school students can now enroll in college courses in high school,
Yes.
and they get credit for that. Can they get more than 9 credits, or is 9 the most?
Yeah,
So,
some students are earning 36 college credits, 40 college credits before they graduate from high school, 20. Dr. Anderson's son, I think, is graduating with like 20. My son's graduating with 37.
so would future funding cuts impact that? Or would we still be able to do that?
So I think that the program that is probably in the most danger of not continuing the ways that it has is Ascent. Right. So I haven't heard of
The
anything.
5th year, right?
The full year of college if you earn 9 college credits in high school. I have not heard of any cutting for the community college system to prevent some of the concurrent enrollment programming. I do think that we'll have to take that on a year-to-year basis.
I'd sure hate to see that go away. I won't comment more. Bye.
Alex.
I just want to add, I'd add more rounds of clapping and standing ovation if we could, but I'm so excited to see the growth and your leadership is amazing to have this level of improvement and increase. I'm really excited about it. I have a couple of questions. For the students who are participating in the APEX programming, what's the mix of what's the mix of their enrollment or during the day? Like how long are they there versus in the high school?
Right.
And then how varied is the uptake from our comprehensive high schools of students who participate at APEX?
Right. So they spend half a day and there's transportation from all of the schools. So they either come for the morning session or the afternoon session. One of the fantastic pieces, well, there's so many fantastic pieces about APEX, but what makes it possible for students to spend half a day is that there's embedded high school graduation requirements. So students can earn English credits, math credits, science credits, elective credits as well. And then the second part of your question was,
How do the comprehensive high schools vary in the percent of their students that do that and do the APEX program?
I can get back to you on the exact percentage, but we do have students from all schools participating, including students coming from Netherlands as well.
Follow up on that is, I'm really interested in, I'm also, another follow-up question for me would be, what's the uptake of students who are doing the CTE or whatever we call it in the comprehensive high school, the Accelerate within the high school programming versus at APEX? And part of that for me also, another follow-up question would be, what percent of the students participating either at APEX or Accelerate are going on to four-year colleges? Because I think we can communicate to parents and families how advantageous this is for students, regardless of what pathway they're choosing, and address historical stigma that's totally inappropriate in 2025 about doing stuff this cool and this exciting. So, I think we have progress to make with families in the community about how advantageous this is, about the long-term trajectories of the students. I have a friend whose eldest child, got her medical certification. She went off to college and aced it with a year of credit before she went. Is in the Peace Corps now and will be in medical school next fall, I'm pretty sure. And she took advantage of this stuff. And that's, one of those students coming out of a comprehensive high school that people would have thought, oh, what do we do to prepare a student to be a surgeon as soon as possible? It's like, well, take advantage of Accelerate and an APEX, so it's not, anyway, I'd be curious to get the numbers that sort of help communicate that to the community.
Definitely do that. But yes, we see that with our students enrolled in Accelerate programming throughout the district and at APEX, where students are enrolled as undergrad students and are working in a job that's related to their long-term goals. And so it really helps accelerate their access to their future goals and career. And it gives them experience that's relevant while they're still in undergrad school. And so that's just one of the many benefits that students have.
All the right questions. I do think that through Grad Plus, we have blended for our community what it means to be successful. And that we have lots of kids who are earning multiple certifications, right? Like a hard number that we could give you is how many kids get college before graduation and industry certification or pathway completion. We would, how many dual credentialed students do we have? We can get that for the board. And, it's just the work that our Grad Plus team has done, I think, long time in the making, and some of the most impactful work I think we've done as a school district, because you can see with your own eyes kids' experiences changing. I was at the Boulder Mod Factory last week with some other superintendents showing off our work in Accelerate and Apex. And we got a chance to talk to a couple kids who were building homes for Habitat for Humanities. And, the question superintendents would say is, are you going to be a carpenter? And they're like, no, I'm not going to be a carpenter. I really enjoy this. I learned a lot of skills, right? But I'm going to probably go to a college and do something completely different. It's just this idea of the kids in BVSD want to learn how to do stuff. Right. And at Apex, you can learn how to do stuff. And our model, I think, is unique and different than maybe some other districts who went out and spent large dollars on bonds for a specific site, because we have a blended program between new facilities at all of our high schools and then other facilities at Apex. We're reaching, I think, a wider range of students with these programs, and just really, really proud of the work that continues to happen. And just want to thank our educators over at Apex, our educators that are going through the process of getting credentialed so we can offer those college classes in our high schools. That is a game changer. Want to thank our partners at Front Range, and all of our business partners that are making this vision come to life, and especially with Impact, who was right there with us from day one, helping to accelerate some of these ideas through some partnership and funding. So just lots to celebrate here.
Jorge, and then Jason.
Thank you for the presentation. I mean, it's just amazing work, seeing how it's grown so fast. So thank you for that work from everybody. I really appreciate the partnership with the community. I think that's so integral, right, for students to see what they can do with what they're learning in the school. But the exciting part for me is, well, an additional exciting part for me is the early work being done in elementary school and middle school, creating those pathways and that interest, because I think that speaks to us wanting to have more in-depth work on the standards, and for students to see the pathway of where they can go starting in elementary school, because I think that's where we need to kind of reach our kids, because that's where they're bored, right? And they want to do stuff that's challenging. My son got a chance, my son and my daughter, the 5th grade class at Pioneer, got to go to see the engineering wing at Centaurus, and they came back so pumped and so excited and talking about math and computers. And I think that's, that connects the dots for us, right? The in-depth work, the standards, and then seeing where you can go with it. So I just want to say thank you.
I'd agree with everyone about just what an incredible program this is, and we all should be proud, and thank you for everything you've done. I guess to that end, I don't think very many people in the community know like the extent of what we offer. And so whether it's kids or families, and I don't know, I'd be curious to know when we kind of first introduced these options for kids. I feel like every middle schooler should get that video that we saw to see kind of what's available in every family. So I don't know, what orientation that would be or where this is in our promotional materials. But I feel like, we know about it, and now we've learned a whole lot more about it, but I don't really think, people I've talked to in the community, they're like, oh, I didn't realize we had this X, Y, or Z program. And it's like, yeah, we do. And we have that even more, and it's even more impressive. And so whatever we can do to kind of embed this throughout middle school orientation, or as kids are going into high school, or even as Jorge said, the more exposure at the elementary level, the better. I think this is like such an incredibly unique aspect of things we do as a district. And I think more and more kids really would want to and should be aware of what we can offer.
Dr. Anderson.
That's a great point, Jason. I think that's why Dare to Dream is so critical in our elementary schools, right? And just, like Jorge had shared, we'll be at every elementary school next year. This year at half the elementary schools. And so that is the entry into the Grad Plus framework. I mean, I think that Grad Plus has a strong brand, and I think that we're really building on that brand through Accelerate, Apex, the honoring of students at graduation, and it just gives us a very succinct way to talk about what we want beyond a high school diploma for our kids. So I think Dare to Dream Week will be a really important piece to really getting this information out to our entire community, because I do think that the kids in high school are starting to really get it and understand it. I mean, remember, this is only like 3 years old, so which is just even more incredible. So, but I do appreciate the fact that it's important everybody knows and understands what they can get when they come to BVSD.
And speaking to that a little bit, I think the Dare to Dream is the first step. I've heard from folks in the community that have gone to elementary schools and shared their careers with the elementary school students, and they come back knowing more about what Grad Plus offers, and they are so excited to be able to be in those classrooms and share their expertise, and lots of positive feedback from the folks who are engaged there. And I think all middle schoolers this year had the opportunity, all 8th graders had the opportunity to go to Apex campus and see that, and then they come home really excited. So as every year, I think it is continuing to grow, and that excitement really generates. I think one thing that has allowed us to expand so rapidly is how quickly our staff was able to integrate these opportunities and these offerings into their classroom. My kiddo came home this year, and sophomore was like, hey, sign this paperwork. I can get college credit from a math class. Last week, I guess I'm taking an industry certification exam for visual arts and design. Great. He's like, what do I do with this? I'm like, I have no idea, but eventually it'll be really exciting. So I think even when kids don't know they're signing up for classes that offer these opportunities, they're receiving them. And then there are folks that are seeking them out specifically. So kudos to all of our staff that are willing to take this on at a pretty quick cadence and embedding it into classes that already exist that kids think that they're taking for fun. And then they come out with like, oh, this might lead to something I could do it in a future career, or it's giving me that second look at what does school mean and what does the future hold for me. So kudos there. One question I have is, with Pathfinder, do parents have access to some of the student results in there or within their ICAP? I know that's one thing, like Naviance. In Naviance, I know you could fill out a form and get access to your students' Naviance accounts in high school, but for those younger, like secondary students in middle school, when they're doing this stuff, is there any way for parents to get information from that?
That will be available in the future. It's not embedded right now, but we can add that feature in the future.
Again, that to Jason's point, something else that would allow our grown-ups to know what's going on is if whether they're looking at anything within Infinite Campus, if that pops up like, oh, my kiddo did this thing and showed it a career interest in XYZ, that also helps not only them support their students, but support the work that we're doing with Grad Plus. And then with the Dare to Dream, we talked a little bit earlier about how time is everybody's most precious resource. And I know some of our early adopters have been really eager with the Dare to Dream programming. How does that fit into their schedule, and what are the trade-offs to make this happen?
So it's really not I would say a trade-off. I would say that given the fact that Jody Bennett does turnkey activities and it's not a heavy lift on the schools, there's lots of time saving with that as well. And so it's really about a series of activities that happens within a week, or, even better, a framework for being able to problem solve within whatever students are learning that's applicable to how does this look. What does this look like in a future career? That's really the gold standard of what we want to be able to get to. But students rotate through specials or library or things like that. And so that's a really fantastic way of being able to schedule that in. So maybe instead of a class going to the library that week or that day, they're rotating in during that type of time as well. And so we really make it flexible so that students and families and staff members don't feel like they're giving something up, and we make it really easy for them because we know and appreciate that it's important for the students to be able to continue to access their grade level standards, and you know what they're learning within the week.
Thank you for that. Alex?
I have one sort of big question and one sort of nerdy in the weeds question. My big question would be, what obstacles, this is such a celebration of this great achievement, and I think as a public official, part of the job is just honoring and promoting the things that are working really well so more people know about it and people have the energy to continue it. But what are the obstacles and challenges to continued growth and improvement in this stuff? What do you wish was easier, and what do you wish the district could do to help this go more?
That's a big question. I would say that, like anything in education, the more we're able to systematize pieces into the fabric of everyday school, the better outcomes we're going to get. And that goes with everything that we do as a district. And so I would say that that is a continued opportunity for us to have it become more and more a part of the fabric of what happens on a, at school, and the lens that we use, so that it goes beyond like, oh, this is a week where we're doing this, but it's really like a lens that we're looking at how, when we're solving math problems, when we're engaging in science class, when we're writing a paper, right? And so all of those pieces, I believe that that's a long-term goal for us to really have Grad Plus become a fabric of what we do that goes across all subject matters. And of course, we're continuously keeping an eye and a focus on our disaggregated data, because we want to make sure that we are continuously ensuring that we are tapping students on the shoulder and making sure that we're encouraging them and guiding them and coaching them, because we know that all students are brilliant and capable, and that they can achieve when they have when we have high expectations and set the right conditions for them to thrive, and provide the supports in place so that they can achieve our high expectations. So that's another piece.
Follow up on the sort of concrete thing. How does the current increase in the college credit integrate with the historical IB and AP and concurrent enrollment programs in the higher ed institutions? How do we make sure the community is not thinking of this as a zero-sum game, and that this, we really are accentuating the additional opportunities without challenging historical ones?
I would thank you for that question, because I would compare it to kind of like how we've moved from the old VOTEC to Accelerate and CTE, and how it's for everybody. I would say that in our community, we are working on making sure that students and families and teachers and everybody, that we all see the value of concurrent enrollment, and that accessing concurrent enrollment is just as important and just as fantastic as AB and IP. Because in the past in our district, maybe there was this view of like one is better than the other, right? And so we've come a long way in making sure that students and families know, and educators know, that college credit is college credit, and depending on what your strengths are, what your interests are, where you want to go to college, sometimes concurrent enrollment makes more sense. Like for my own child who's going to CU, he pursued concurrent enrollment, so 36 college credits so that he could go to CU instead of AB and IP pathway. And I'm not saying that AB and IP pathways are not also fantastic, but for my own son who's going to CU, that's what made the most sense for him. And so really being able to educate students and families and educators on that, depending on what your pathway is, we have fantastic Grad Plus TOSAs at the schools that are able to sit side by side with students and families to say, like, actually, Alex, you would be great in this course, and this is why, because this is what your interests are. So, yeah.
Dr. Anderson?
And correct me if I'm wrong, Bianca, but our AP numbers have increased.
Absolutely.
So our AP, I do think that folks are seeing as, well, if you bring in all this concurrent enrollment, all these programs that we've spent all this time and effort and energy building will be compromised. We're finding new and different ways to engage kids in college credit. And so our AP numbers have increased. Our IB programs are continue to be able to offer the things they've always offered. And, hundreds, if not thousands of more kids are getting the opportunity to get college credit in subjects beyond math and English and social studies and science. My own son's getting a business course from CU Succeeds, and think that his American Sign Language teacher was credentialed, and he was able to get credits there. And to your point, he would bring home a thing, say, hey, I can get college credit for this class, Dad. Would you sign it? I'm like, yeah, I will sign that. Thank you. And so it is, but I think we've gotten over I think we've gotten over that initial worry, because I will say, board members, 4 years ago, before Grad Plus was a thing, and many of you know this story, we engaged a group to help us try to expand and diversify our AP and IB coursework through a series of book studies and interest surveys and identification of students we felt like who could be successful but weren't in the classes. And then after student enrollment happened that year, after spending a year leading that work, our numbers didn't change at all. That's when we were convinced that the system needed to change. And so that is what we've done, and the results have just been makes you feel really good about what we're doing here in BVSD.
Board members, any other questions on this particular topic? I was asked for a short comfort break, so this would be an organic stopping point if we're done with questions on this particular series of information. So 5-minute recess, and we'll reconvene at 7 after. Welcome back, everybody, to this very exciting and important conversation on our strategic plan and Unified Improvement Plan. And we are going to be moving on to math acceleration with Jonathan Dings.
Yep. So as we round out the third of our 4 strategic objectives conversation, Jonathan's going to be providing updates and some data around accelerated math. And then we'll move on to our 4th strategic objective, which will also be a meaty conversation.
So in Boulder Valley, as we see on the next slide, we offer some on-ramps to mathematics acceleration, with the idea being that by gaining a year somewhere towards the end of elementary and the beginning and middle of middle school, that it's then possible to take algebra in 8th grade or even earlier. The on-ramps that are offered are typically at 4th, 6th, and 7th grade. And a number of these have been around for a very long time. So 4th and 5th grade being compacted into one class and taken by kids at grade 4 has been around for, well, decades. And we've seen that here in terms of some offerings over time that included the possibility of taking that course online, right? Which now is the method by which the most kids access that. There are also 5 schools about where there's an in-person version of that being given. And then this idea about this 7th grade course being a compacted 7th and 8th grade one, that is not now a possibility, as a relatively later in middle school realized on ramp, right? For a kid who takes regular 6th grade math and then recognizes the possibility to accelerate in grade 7 by compacting grade 7 and grade 8. But the model that's newest, finally, I get to, right, is this idea about taking 1.5 years worth of content in 1 year, and then taking the complementary piece of 1.5 years the year after. And it's this model that's been around now a couple years that we can look at in terms of some of the progress that's being made. So if we look on the next slide, what we see, right, is that there are bars on the bottom here, blue, yellow, and green, that represent taking a grade level math course, 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, and by a 6th grader, 7th grader, 8th grader, right? So what we see in the 23-24 year is that there's a bigger percentage rather of kids taking that kind of grade level math than there is in the 24-25 year, the current year. And then if we look above to see where's that difference coming from, we see that the piece of it we're seeing is essentially advanced math 2. Right, so that's the course, that's the second half of 7th grade and 8th grade, taken by a 7th grader, typically in the advanced sequence, though it could be taken by a 6th grader also, right? But what we see then, zooming in to learn a little bit more about this 7th grade cohort on the next slide. All right, we've circled what that is, and it's advanced 2, sorry. On this next slide, right, we've just zoomed into 7th grade, and we're seeing that it's not as many kids taking the 7th grade math course in the bar that's yellow, but a substantial number higher kids taking advanced math 2, and that more than offsets the number of kids. It's a lesser number of kids taking 8th grade math in grade 7 because the acceleration model we have now is this. Okay, so zooming back out, but going to the next slide, we can look at this by race, ethnicity also, and these are for the groups that are large enough to show the data by 6th through 8th grade, right? And what we see, right, is that there's a in every group, the top part of the green bar, right, which is the kids below that are all in the green bar, yellow bar, and blue bar at the bottom, are taking a grade level math course, right? But in every one of the cases where comparisons are made by group, it's a decrease in the number of kids, sum total across 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, taking the on grade level math course, and an increase in the red bar, again showing algebra 2. So we're seeing that this pattern holds, not perfectly evenly across groups, but there is a pattern there. That way, maybe a smaller gain for Hispanic students relative to other groups. And then on the next slide that we have, we can see that for TAG students on the right, in particular, there's a bigger decrease in the number of kids taking on grade level math, and leaving an increase in the other areas, but that it's more even across the other groups. And I put a little asterisk on the free and reduced lunch number, knowing that we need to update that once we have our system updated that way. And with that, we're ready for questions and comments.
Thank you for that, Jonathan. Melania, and then Kitty.
Thank you for the presentation. Where I continue to be disconcerted on this is the virtual component of the 4th and 5th grade advancement. And so from what I heard you say, there's 5 schools that have that in person. So are we enabling, or rather, how are we enabling other kids to get that in-person instruction? Because I suspect that all of these numbers would rise if we weren't expecting that to be a virtual class for 4th and 5th.
As you named, the large majority of schools, students are participating in the virtual option. And the reason for that is because the large majority of schools do not have the FTE to make, or the way the grades and ability levels break out at the school level. And so there's not additional FTE being allocated to schools for advanced math, which is why we are actually, I hear you on your concern, but we are actually very glad and excited to be able to offer this virtual option because more students are able to participate this way. You know, of those few schools who are able to offer it on site, I know at least of one for whom they just have this very clean, even break in at their grade levels of students who are advanced and students who are on grade level. And so that has enabled them to offer a really clean, just with 2 rounds, a really clean way of offering advanced opportunities, but that's very rare, and that's why we initiated the online or virtual option. And while I hear your concern, we do continue to get positive feedback about these options, and the class offerings and instruction continue to improve year over year. And so that's the model that we have at this time. We don't have increased FTE, as you know.
Dr. Anderson, then Kitty and Jason.
I've heard the same. I've heard the same concerns. And you know, to the extent that we continue to adjust and think about our models, I think that that's important. You know, I will say that because we've created like 3 different moments in time where kids can move forward, if there's a parent who doesn't feel like they can handle it virtually, it doesn't mean that they're foregoing their opportunity to advance to the place where they can complete algebra by the end of 8th grade, which can get you to Calc AB or BC, depending on how advanced you are. And so I do think it's something that we continue to look at and understand. But I've heard it too. And I wish I could tell folks, yes, we could solve that problem. But the FTE that it would take to do that equitably, I mean, you'd have to have, you know, 10, 15 more people, right? A couple $1 million. So I think I am encouraged by the fact that, you know, when you start to think about, you know, our racial subgroups, they're all making gains in the number of students that are advancing in math. That was not the case before we changed the system. But, you know, what would that in-person support look like if it's not a full-time in-person teacher? Is there some potential there? I think that that's something that we have to continue to think about. But I just want to acknowledge that I've heard that and acknowledge the fact that the system has changed. We are getting more equitable outcomes because we've changed the system. More kids are getting opportunities. And we know and understand that kids, especially kids that are stretching themselves to accelerate, right? That in-person support, they're finding that they need more of that, and we don't have a solution for that yet.
So I just have a comment on this. The presentation part of it is that I find this a bit overwhelming in terms of the amount of information and trying to distinguish between the colors and what do they all mean. And it actually, for me, makes it a little harder to internalize what's the trend here. But I also have a question. What is excuse me, PIB? Oh, pre-IB? Okay, got it. As soon as I said it out loud, I figured it out. Okay, that's all I have to say. Thanks.
Just back to the point Lillia raised and Dr. Anderson covered, you know, I think we all have the same concerns and also understand the reality of the funding and what that, you know, what it would take to have in person at every campus or more schools. But given that, you know, I have kids in different grade levels, and this has been an option for my oldest son, but we didn't pursue it. But I'd love to know, so I don't actually know what this looks like. I'd love to know what the student experience is like for this, and how, for those parents and folks in our community who have these real concerns about this option, you know, how can we, I guess, alleviate some of those concerns by highlighting what's different from pandemic era Zoom calls. And I think that's the concern, is like, we all lived through that. We all know what that's like. We all know how challenging that was, both for students and teachers. how is this better? How have we improved on this? What is the student experience like, given that this is probably our reality for the near future, at least?
Great question. I visited some of these classes last year, and it was very different from what we think of as pandemic time learning, in that during the pandemic, students were alone for the most part at home in a one-way learning environment online. And what I witnessed in the schools that I visited was that there's a person in the room with the students, typically I saw the GT advisor, I saw a para educator, and it was a small group of students in a space together, and the teacher delivered learning to them as a group, but then they had time to take off headsets, interact with each other, do some live engagement. There was whiteboard work. They were interacting with the GTA or the classified staff person who was in the space. So, and then there was some one-on-one conversation with the teacher and like checking work live. So it was very different than what we think of as the virtual learning that happened during COVID, and much more engaging. And I appreciated that I saw kids take off, headsets and have time to problem solve with each other. They were comparing work. And so, it was a very engaging experience from what I witnessed I think I went to 3 or 4 different schools.
To that end, do you think, I wondered, because I think, we all have these concerns, we remember what it's like, and it sounds like it's not like that. It maybe for some kids it still is, but I wonder if it's a branding thing, as if it's really not entirely virtual. And I think people see that and they immediately remember that experience and say, I don't want that for my kids, and it's going to be harmful. And so maybe there's another way to talk about this. And I don't know what that is, but like a hybrid virtual or a hybrid option, where you're still getting interaction with other kids, you're getting, direct instruction with the teacher, and you're also getting the accelerated content through the virtual option. And so I think, a lot of parents, like myself included, and a lot of folks we know, did not pursue this option because we didn't really fully understand what it's like. So I think, maybe some education in terms of, what is actually being offered, and then also clarification that it's not virtual. And so maybe it's just the name change. I don't know.
Dr. Anderson.
I do think that there's an opportunity to, think about, how could we put together a video or something of what it could look like, but then also to know and understand, like as parents of like 9 and 10-year-olds, like, what are you trying to do? Like, are you trying to get your kid beyond Calc BC to like a differential equations course in 12th grade or whatever comes beyond Calc BC? Because I mean, that's the path that you're deciding on at 9. Like this is what we're talking, because if you can jump in, so my son did 6th and 7th, 1.5 years. That worked out great for him. Got him to Calc. He probably wishes he wasn't in Calc right now because he's preparing for his AP exam. But maybe some more video around what's at stake and what is it that you're trying to do. And then what does this do? Like, so, theoretically, what percentage of students need to take a math in high school beyond Calc BC, right? But it's hard because when you got an elementary school kid, you don't want to give, pass up on opportunities. I think what I've seen is sometimes what happens is kids will stretch themselves to go to this super advanced opportunity, and it's really hard. And so, so in any event, more communication for sure. I think that would definitely help, but then also communication on what does this mean and what's at stake with this decision.
I'm going to hop in, and then I saw Jorge and Alex and Elenia's hands come back up. And I just want to piggyback. When you're coming in at this point, it's hard. You're coming with some preconceived notions, right? I had a kiddo that had to take a bus to a middle school to get advanced math and miss specials and miss social studies every day of 5th grade. So that option's not great either. The access, increasing access, we're not in it. It used to be schools had to have the right number, and sometimes they would hold kids out of that right number, or they'd force kids into that right number to make the class work. So there were things that were really problematic with the old option as well. And so I think messaging this hybrid, but we were trying to solve some very specific problems and increase access. And I think that's something that we were able to accomplish without those really big trade-offs, right? We want kids to not have to spend time missing other class opportunities to get what they need for math. So there's no perfect solution. We've never had a perfect solution. And I think that's just important for the community to understand. And to Dr. Anderson's point, I think, you know, when we show these math pathways to elementary school students and their families mostly, and to middle school students, we don't talk about where you end up. And as a parent of a high schooler whose kiddo and their friends got on this math pathway early on, I know so many people that are like, how do I get off of this math pathway? And what is the point at this? What is the point anymore? And I wish I would have known like what farther down the road it really means and why. And is it important or is it not? Or is it just like this feeling of like, I want my kid to have something and we're not doing a great job of extending and enriching. So we think our only opportunities to accelerate, whether that's the right thing for the kid or not. And so I think this conversation needs to evolve on all the things we're doing to support kids, whatever their needs are, wherever their needs are. Acceleration is one of many tools, and that it really is not a competition with your school community. It's about what's best for your kids and what does it look like when you're in high school, because not everybody needs like differential equations and theoretical math in high school. And they may not want that anymore, but then colleges are kind of looking for those 4 years of math. And so prepping early, like this decision might land you somewhere. There's off-ramps, but those off-ramps becoming increasingly hard the farther down the pathway you go. And so when we communicate about all the options, communicating that I think is really important, just so people are really clear. And then there's a point at which we can no longer offer math. So then they'd have to take it at CU or take it elsewhere. So the math thing I think is really complicated and there's no one right way for every student. And I'm glad we have on and off ramps throughout there. And then one quick question, and then I'll come back to my other ones. Do you feel like the increased number is a direct result of the curriculum that we purchased because the curriculum is embedded to have 1.5 years in with that accelerated, compacted option, like the curriculum has changed and is designed with the 1.5 years in mind? Do you think that's attributing to some of the increase in your charts?
I think so. I think that this model works a bit better. I think this model allows for an easier on-ramp to trying something that's not two years into one, but one and a half. I think we'll know more over time about how this works out. And I guess I would even go so far as to propose that if people know that there's a good middle level option in 6th grade, that's 1.5 years. And you know, that maybe that will be the thing where we say, look, if getting to algebra in 8th grade is good enough, then let's be okay with elementary not having necessarily the place where you work really hard in grade 4, mostly on your own, to do something online in a class, hopefully in some small manner. And then, so, but I think it's, I think that that we will learn more about what this is over time, but the initial results are at least somewhat promising. And that as we look at these over time, we also need to know that there's movement within courses in the year, right? So while we show these on-ramps as if it's at the end of the year, but even in looking at these data with more time, I would fine tune these even a little bit more and make a rule for determining if a kid was in advanced 1 and then went down to 6th grade math, which way did that kid get counted? So there's some imperfection in this also, but I think this is really encouraging, the 1.5 years.
Jorge, Alex, Lelania.
Thank you. I appreciate the discussion around the opportunities to go in and out of these tracks. I think the fear among parents is if I don't get my kid on the track now, they're not going to get back on there again, and I have to do this right now. And I get that, you know, and it's confusing because I remember seeing that chart for the first time with the arrows and going back and forth, and I'm like, I got nothing here. I don't know what to do with this. The first time I saw it. So I think that communication part to parents is so critical about the opportunities and that there are trade-offs, right? In terms of things that you miss by doing this, in terms of other things. At the same time, you know, I think it's great that seeing some increased participation, but there's some groups here, right? The ones that often get missed, right? Multilanguage learners, kids and IPs, free reduced lunch, the Latino group that we're not seeing that participation. So I'm interested in hearing a little bit more about how the system has changed, what gatekeeping looks like, and how these opportunities are being communicated to parents in terms of getting in. Because I've I've seen people who are like, oh, I want my kid to get into this, but they're not quite there. And so how do we do this? And so I'd like to understand that process better and how that's related to some of these numbers a little bit.
I'm wondering if it would be appropriate. We have our outstanding STEAM director and math TOSA here, but rather than call them up on the spot, I'm wondering if it would be appropriate in the interest of time to be able to provide some of this information as a follow-up. And that way our academics team can weigh in and they're the closest to this work. Would that work?
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
I'm also excited to see the increase, and I'd be really interested to find out what the parent and the student perceptions are of the experience, because it looks like a dramatic change over the last just the last couple of years. So I think we have a lot of affected families and kids who we could ask and say, how did this go? I think in terms of presentation, just one thing to simplify it to Kitty's point, which I'm really sympathetic to myself. I look at slide 37, for example, and I think it would be easier to put the blue and the yellow and the green together into sort of at grade level. And then that makes it easier to see, because what I see there is a pattern, frankly, of increased gaps between white and black and white and Hispanic, and Asian and of two races. And so by accelerating disproportionately amongst those subgroups, same for FRL and multilanguage learners, we are increasing a gap. And so that makes me lead to another follow-up question for another day. But what is the education that's happening in grades 1 through 3 that set kids up for this, and what are the trajectories of where they're actually performing? Like on the 3rd grade math tests that we have in benchmarks that let us know that, hey, we need to be thinking about our tier 1 instruction of Hispanic and Black and students or student in FRL, so that they're in a better position to take advantage of whatever our cool, new, improved acceleration opportunities are. So I look at this and I see definitely a glass that's half full with great increasing the access to it, but I want to know what's the student and family experience of this, which will help us educate them about the trade-offs and the issues with the opportunity. So I want to go find out what they're saying. And then I want to find out, okay, well, so our Hispanic and our FRL pickup of this new opportunity is much less than the other students. What's the deal behind that? And then what in our tier 1 instruction for those populations in the earlier grades could lessen that gap over time? And I don't know that there's time to address all of those things, but that's what I see in this data.
Dr. Anderson and then Elenia.
Just a couple things to point out. We're adopting a new math curriculum for elementary school. I do think that that's a big step in the right direction. I do think that understanding parents' experience is important as well. And then, but I think what Jorge said is really important. How do you know if your kid needs to do this or not? And moving away from the hysteria of my kid's always gotten great grades. Here's this opportunity. Right? You could have all A's and not take that opportunity because it might not be right for you, because the environment that you have to learn in is very different than the environment that you'd had to learn in previously. So, but if you want the in-person, at middle school, you'll get it, right? And you can still get to where you need to be. So some communication, I do think, Alex, to your point, how are kids showing up ready in math? Do we have a curriculum that's being consistently implemented with fidelity, where kids are being challenged, not only just the computational, but they be able to the application and the thinking, right? Going back to our first grade level standards, I will remind the board that this past year, more kids were on grade level or above grade level in math than ever before on CMAS. And so we do have some leading indicators that, things are overall generally going pretty well. But I think those are the things at the next level. But it's this, I remember it as a parent, my wife and I, like, okay, what do we do here? Right. Because I know if we don't, making a choice when they're 9 changes a choice when they're 18. A lot of pressure. right? So I do think that we have some work to do there.
Beth.
Just to add to the questions, and I love all the points you just made, Dr. Anderson, as well as my colleagues. But for another time, I think Jorge hit the question on the head there. Gatekeeping and then identification of students who are eligible for acceleration. How are we looking at that? I remember there being some kind of very subjective measure of you're accelerated in math and I don't really know the details on that. And I think it'd be important to look at when we talk about GT identification as well as acceleration opportunities for students.
The other data point I'd be interested in looking at in the future are success rates for different entry points of the pathway. I hear stories of kids that take Algebra 2 or Algebra 2-3 in middle school, have to retake it in high school, or like there are pain points where all of a sudden some acceleration paths leave gaps that create hurdles and challenges for kiddos further down the line. And so I'd be curious to know as we could follow the kids through to see how successful they are in different types of acceleration points, or whether it's, CMAS tests you on your grade level content, no matter what grade you're in, something to help us better understand and then inform the conversation with our community around the opportunities and the potential pitfalls for different acceleration options. Okay, thank you for that. I think that wraps up our questions on math for now. We'll come back to those.
Okay, board members, I'm very aware of time, so I will try to keep up the pace as we walk through this very important value that the board, our staff, our community hold to ensure that every student that walks into one of our buildings feels valued and included. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that there are many things that contribute to the overall well-being of students, as we all know. The daily practices that our educators engaging with students, the evolution of lesson plans to ensure that they're as engaging as they possibly can be, our office professionals ensuring that those environments that students walk into feel safe and welcoming for everyone. All of those contribute to this, but there's a few things within the UIP specifically that I want us to be able to highlight and talk through. Three things in particular. One is our work around discipline and our accuracy of assigning disciplinary resolutions to student actions. So the framework that we use and the guidelines that we provide to our school administrators in support of how they respond to behavior incidents that take place in their school. Some steps that we are taking to ensure that equity remains a focus for all of our buildings, as well as some ongoing professional learning that you've heard about within the other objectives as well. I think you'll notice a couple of different areas throughout this objective that you'll see some redundancies in terms of action steps around how this aligns to MTSS, as well as our focus on professional learning. But feel free to jump in if you have specific questions on those. So first off, we have a district-wide focus on well-being. This is in progress. We do have we completed the Be Well surveys in the fall, as you all know, and we're anxiously awaiting the results of that analysis and those recommendations to help us inform some next steps in terms of where we can focus and improve. But in addition to that, we have equity goals that are being implemented in all of our schools this year. So at the beginning of the year, in the development of our unified improvement plans for each of those schools, or 90-day plans, we asked explicitly that we identify equity goals within each of those plans. We talked about what some exemplar equity goals could look like and how they could do that. As we transition into next year with our 90-day plans, we're going to be very intentional with highlighting the successes of those equity goals within schools so that building leaders can see how those were drafted, the action steps that were taken, and how they can build off of some of that success. So building on those equity goals currently and into the future, but that was completed this year. This is, again, a redundant slide. You've seen these numbers before in terms of professional learning and the breakdown there. And just another reminder that these things around cultural competency, we are being really intentional with embedding those in every opportunity that we can. So you may not see the direct numbers in terms of this is a district-wide focus on this, but it is embedded in other professional learning that we're providing as well. And then an increased use of restorative practices. So although you might not see a specific target outlined within our UIP on restorative practices, we do know that it is in the interest of the board as well as our staff to ensure that we're continuing to increase the use of restorative practices throughout our district. So you'll see, if you're a staff member at BVSD, you'll see weekly updates around restorative practices from our restorative practices coordinator, information on how best to access those restorative practices resources in a toolkit, with their school-specific support that's being provided, and then consistent ongoing updates to resources around restorative practices that schools can take advantage of. Additionally, all safety advocates and campus safety and security monitors have received restorative practices training this year as well. So again, continuing that progress. All right. So in terms of increasing accuracy to disciplinary resolutions, there's a few things that I want to highlight here. Number one is that we have quarterly meetings, quarterly Vortex meetings that our legal team, our safety and security team, as well as our amazing director of student support services, Sen Hour, leads, where they are providing information on policy updates. They're providing information and examples of what accurate discipline codes and response to specific behavior incidences look like, as well as even getting some time for them to look at their specific data to identify where they see where they can complete data and where they can calibrate with their peers on how they're coding specific data. So those quarterly meetings have proven to be very helpful for our building leaders. We also have internally monthly behavior data meetings where we're focused on looking at some behavior data and identifying some trends and seeing what support the system needs in that. The new guidance document, which we refer to the discipline framework, which is two things. It's the guidance overall for discipline, as well as a matrix that we're going to dive a little bit deeper into, and I'm going to allow Sena to walk us through that a little bit more. And then really just a shout out to Sena and her entire team for how responsive she is to building leaders. She is on call 24/7 responding to building leaders as they have questions or if they just need someone to talk through and identify what the best course of action is as they are responding to certain incidents. And so I think her ongoing support and that team's ongoing support has proven to be really helpful, as you'll see here in a minute. I'll transition into this adherence percentage, which this is a new measure that you have not seen yet that we have identified this year that helps us determine what a baseline is for adherence to this new discipline framework. So I'll also invite Claire Sims, our senior data visualization designer, to talk a little bit about how that percentage was created. But I think we're going to be, I know we're really proud of the work that we've done in terms of aligning discipline practices across the system. So with that, I will hand it off to Senan to talk a little bit about the actual discipline matrix and give you some examples.
Thanks, Chris. President Rajpal, members of the board, I'm really excited to be joining you today and excited to talk to you a little bit about our discipline framework. But first, I want to make an important connection for you about why discipline is included in our valued and included part of the strategic plan. Because dealing with discipline is very much it's a very human, holistic child sort of approach. So it's really important that discipline, and when students make mistakes, it's handled with compassion, consistency, accurate procedures and policies, and of course then with an equity lens and culturally responsive practices and approaches. And I think also too, if all of us as educators in the room, members of a community, if you have children in your family, we all know that kids are going to make mistakes. And we want them to. We need them to. That's how we learn. That's how they develop. And as humans, as adults, we even continue to make mistakes. So we know and expect that that's going to happen. And of course, we are teaching expected school behaviors, reviewing them, reinforcing them all the time. And yet, as children learn and develop, they are going to make some mistakes that need some support and some consequences as well. So when a school leader is supporting a student in a situation where they've made a mistake, violated a policy, have, misconduct, whatever you want to call it, what is so essential is that they take into the context of what happened. Who are the students involved? What are their abilities or disabilities or specific situations they may be facing that played into the situation, how many kids are involved, and exactly what happened. And so it's really important that we all think about discipline as a both and type of situation, meaning that we've got to look at the art of it, which is, again, who are the children involved and what do they need to repair the harm, to re-enter the community, to maintain that sense of belonging, which is what we know prevents kids from making the same mistakes again. And the science piece, as you know, like following policies and laws and procedures for documentation, for communicating with families, things like that. So I ask that we just kind of hold that art and science piece, or some members of our team have called it support and consequence, the both and piece, as we look at the discipline framework and think about some examples I'll share with you. So you can see there are 5 color-coded levels of the framework. Level 1, very low-level things that we expect our educators to handle in the classroom or in the school setting. So you could, think of these as low level, low frequency, not that big of a deal kind of things. Level 2 behaviors would be things that would get referred to the office for some support of a school administrator. And that might be they have a warning conference, coaching conference with the student or the students involved, contact parents or caregivers. Level 3 is ramping that up. So there would likely be, of course, a referral to the office, but then maybe a more formal consequence from the school administration. And level 4 then is kind of a guaranteed formal consequence, like a suspension, things like that. And level 5, thank goodness, we don't have very many of these in our system, but these are things like immediate safety risks that prompt, immediate call to law enforcement, things like that. Next slide. Okay, so at the top of, we went over the 5 different levels, and then Chris, if you'll hit, I'm gonna talk to you about 3 different examples of real discipline codes that we use, because I want you to get a sense of the continuum of how schools would respond to the various infractions. So a violation of the BVSD dress code, we want classroom teachers to handle that. Maybe an administrator gets involved, has a little coaching, don't wear that again, or wear something more, or whatever that may be. So a level 1 and 2 response is what we would expect. And when we see that in the documentation, we know that that would be adhering to this framework. Peer conflict, this is a good one. So if you think a minute about all the different ways that a peer conflict can look, especially if you think about like a 5-year-old versus a 16-year-old and how many kids are involved. And what was the conflict about? Was it something like a really simple disagreement about whose turn it was on a swing versus, a passionate philosophical, disagreement too? So a peer conflict can look a lot of different ways. And for that reason, the response from the school administration might need to be lighter, more intense, have a bigger or smaller consequence, depending on the children involved, the context around it, and whatever is the lesser intervention to help them learn, again, restore safety, repair the harm, and re-enter the community and their relationships in a good and positive way. Then the third example is fighting, which of course we all understand means, physical contact, maybe there's some injuries, definitely unsafe. So those responses, if they're level 2, 3, or 4 from the school administration, would be considered adhering to the framework. Okay, thanks for those on there, Chris. So just real quick, just these other visuals on the slide, you can see that if we noted that there was a fight documented at a school, but the response was only level 1, we would know, gosh, we need to look into that, what happened, because level 2, 3, and 4 would let us know that the response from the school was adherence to the framework. Now, Claire, we'll talk to you about how we're measuring that.
Thank you. So I'm excited to be presenting one straightforward number today instead of a whole dashboard to talk about. So what we did was we looked at all of the incidents that took place between the first and the end of the third quarter of this school year. And so that was 3,141 incidents overall. And we would code those based on whether they were within that adherence or not. So for each incident, looking at what happened per the codes that we had just showed, Did that fall into that expected range within our framework or not? And it could have been higher or lower. And so what we found overall for that time period was a 96.6% adherence. So I think overall, this is showing that for the most part, we are seeing that the responses detailed in the framework and within that matrix are fitting and making sense to the practices that are happening. A couple notes here. So, this is, as we've mentioned, the first year of this new framework implementation. And that is being launched within a landscape of policy changes and just complexities as well. This is also live data, and so there's ongoing cleanup efforts. So again, when we see that that percentage and those incidents that are not in adherence, those are opportunities for coaching, for looking more specifically at the context of what those incidents were, who was involved, and just further conversations, refinements, and reflection on practices. Okay, that's what I have. Thanks.
So I'll just build on this a little bit because in addition to the data being live, there being new codes from the state that we need to make sure that we're training our administrators on so that they just know that they are coding things accurately. In addition to all that, this is year one of the framework. So anytime we roll out anything new, we anticipate learnings, we anticipate possibly adjusting, identifying where people see alignment, where they don't, where they are confused by certain language. So the fact that we're at 96.6% of over 3,000 instances, I think is a huge testament to Senate and her team. It's a huge testament to our safety and security, everyone who is contributing to not only ensuring that principals have a solid understanding of the coding, but that they also have the ability to calibrate with one another and remain consistent across from school to school on how we're responding to those behavior incidents, which is the primary outcome for that. So just big shout out to Senate and team.
Thank you for that update. Board members, any questions or comments for the team on the well-being indicator? Dr. Anderson and then Jason.
Can you go back to that one number? This is 6 years in the making. I do not know of another district in America that has taken on the efforts that BVSD has taken on around disproportionate discipline in transforming our entire system from consistency amongst schools to a framework, to the matrix, to the restorative practices work, to the adherence to what our expectations are. This is just one little number in one little blue box, but I will tell you that this just represents just incredible amounts of work and focus. And I look forward to continuing to get better. I just do not know of another district that is even touching disproportionate discipline. I think that unfortunately, in a lot of places, they look at it as something they just have to accept to keep order in their schools, which is not true. And that zero tolerance and very punitive consequences the only ways to keep kids safe, which is not true. And we're proving that in reducing the number of suspensions, increasing the restorative practices, maintaining very safe environments in our schools, and continuing to dig into and improve. And so I feel like I just need to say that for our public to know and understand that I don't know of anybody doing this in the ways that we're doing it and has invested as much time. And so I just want to, to thank our team. And again, I think as a lot of the work that we're doing, a model for others to follow if they have the issues that our community has had, of the issues around massively disproportionate discipline, massive inconsistencies, biases, personal biases, infiltrating processes that should be about helping kids learn from their mistakes and improve.
I mean, to the point, 6 years ago, Jorge and I were involved in the development of that original matrix. It has been a minute. And I'm really, 96.6% is outstanding. One question I have is, when there is a range of potential discipline codes that schools, staff could input, Senan, are you and your team looking at, like, as you're getting those, you're saying, oh, this is a 4, maybe it could have been a 2. They're both within range, but maybe the particulars of this situation, as you're looking and supporting schools along the way to improve their adherence, are you having those conversations at all, and how are those going?
Yeah, yes and yes. So that's when Chris referenced just my on-call availability for schools. So when they need a thought partner, like here's the situation, here's all the details, I'm able to thought partner with them and really think through, what is the context? Who are the kids involved? If these were different students, would you respond the same way? We're having those conversations just one-on-one individually all the time. I also have convened a high school advisory group this year with assistant principals from our big comprehensive high schools. And we have gone through, they really self-selected what they are seeing as like the most common behavior things that they're dealing with. And so we talked through exactly how are we all responding in the first offense, second offense, third offense within this framework, within the board policies. And so that we're, again, for reasons of equity and fairness, and also just doing right by each kid that makes a mistake, we are just kind of, again, I love the word calibrating to make sure that we are responding the same way within the same context. And so both on an individual level and then within our system too, we're working on that. And I hope I know our middle level leaders are asking for the same kind of group next year. So I plan to start meeting with them to do that same calibration, because I do see, some differences in our middle school data that I'd like to shore up.
Thank you for that. And thank you for also acknowledging that kids are going to make mistakes, and it's developmentally appropriate to make these mistakes. And we really supporting them through that learning opportunity that mistakes can provide is really important. And I'm glad you're going to roll it out to the middle schools. I think that's going to be extremely helpful. And I think messaging, again, this helping our community understand how this process works. And it's like, the vortex meetings and the constant communication, we're all trying to improve, we're all trying to get better, and we're doing a pretty darn good job of it along the way. And I think, elevating that for our community members that have felt different iterations of our discipline practices throughout their experience in BVSC, that it's a work in progress and we're getting there, but communicating that out so people feel a little bit more reassured.
I will say that precision is incredibly important. It takes a family, one experience with one person and one incident to lose faith in an entire system if it's not done correctly, right? Like I just want to put this into perspective, which is why the level of precision that we've taken is so important. And so again, like every incident matters, and this calibration and really shifting just the mindset around what consequences and restorative interventions are for, right? I think is just really, really important. But it is just if something happens and a parent has a bad interaction with one person in our system, it can compromise their trust in the entire system.
Alex.
Yeah, I would. I know we don't have enough time today, but I look forward to sort of continued information and dialogue with the board on these topics. I think if it's not in our prioritization list for some time soon, I think we should explore it more. I mean, as a board member, I deal with, of those 3,000 plus incidents, many of them involve somebody else who was treated poorly by the kid who's subject to the discipline. And so the folks who are emailing and calling me are having that negative experience, or the kid who's subject to the discipline is the one who's been subject to the bullying, and then they're acting out, and that's what gets them up to a threshold in which action's taken. So I'm really interested in understanding in a more nuanced way what the student and family experience is and what the experiences of all the parties subject to the incidents that lead to the discipline. Because I think we probably do have more to do. And if we're getting 29 out of 30 cases right in terms of adherence, then is that 3% that generates all the grief we get? When I talk with you about what the executive directors and stuff are doing, they're spending a disproportionate amount of time on a small number of incidences that go very sideways. So like what's going on in that negative experience that leads to it going sideways? And how can we decrease the frequency of that? Because it seems like a huge opportunity cost when we have the high profile or conflictual or litigious versions of this. And then I would add, continues to be why I've repeatedly suggested that we need to up our communications game with materials that are appropriate and that can talk about what the experience will be for all the parties when some disciplinary thing does happen. Because it does seem to me from a governance perspective, we deal with a disproportionately small number of cases that have gone disproportionately badly. And it involves not just the person who's subject to the discipline, but everybody who was party to the issue in the first place. I know we don't have time to go into that today.
Thanks for that, Alex. Board members, any last questions before we wrap up this portion of today's agenda? Thank you so much for this presentation. I think understanding what is happening along the way to meet our goals of the Unified Improvement Plan is of importance to this board and our community. It's not just what we achieve at the end point, but what are we doing along the way that's really, really moving the mountains for our students. So thank you for including the implementation metrics update. Board members, our final agenda item of this afternoon is executive session. May I have a motion? Lelania.
I, Lelania Quinlan Oweda, make a motion pursuant to CRS 24-6-4024B to convene into executive session to receive specific legal advice about federal certification requirements, and pursuant to CRS 24-6-4024B to receive specific legal advice on the charter school renewal and contracting process, and pursuant to CRS 24-6-4024E1 to determine positions relative to matters that are subject to negotiations, developing strategy for negotiations, and instructing negotiators regarding negotiation of charter school contracts.
Is there a second? Seconded by Beth. Laura, can you please call the roll?
Chavez,
Yes.
Medler,
Yes.
Niznik,
Yes.
Quinlan Oweda,
Yes.
Rajpal,
Yes.
Sergeant,
Yes.
Unger.
Yes.
Motion passes.
This concludes the public portion of today's agenda. Board members, we will convene in Glacier Room and officially adjourn our meeting from there after executive session is over. But for the public, we are adjourned from your perspective.